Thanks for being here. Subscribe to Cheating Stories Best, so you don't miss new stories.
Looking around the large room, I froze in confusion. I had no idea what to do next. I watched a very beautiful woman in a pretty nurse's outfit looking around, searching for something or someone. Then, a man in a wolf costume approached her. She raised her head and smiled at him. "Joey?" she asked. He shook his head. She wasn't rude or impolite, but her disappointment was obvious. Her shoulders slumped, her head and chin dropped, and her beautiful smile disappeared. After a short conversation with the wolf, he moved on. A few minutes later, Iron Man approached her. His suit was a true technological marvel. It glowed, and lasers fired from its hands. The helmet's visor mechanically rose to reveal the wearer's face. I envied him. How I wished I had such a suit. I love Iron Man. However, when his face was revealed, the woman's disappointment became even more obvious. I scratched my head with the plastic, stylized Hessian cavalry axe that was part of my costume. I still didn't know what to do, and since my head was where my chest was usually located, it looked strange. I didn't care what it looked like. If someone thought it was strange, I could also scratch my fifth place with this axe. Besides, I'd been through so much in recent weeks that I no longer cared what I looked like. Life is too short to worry about your appearance. Things are not always what they seem. In fact, if it weren't for me and the tiny red-haired woman I was now looking at, along with another group of people who were scattered in all directions, none of these people would have been at this Halloween party. Looking at the woman again, I realized that her cute nurse outfit looked out of place. She was petite and didn't look like a typical temptress. But, as I said, things aren't always what they seem. Rebecca's body is deceiving. Yes, I know her name. I know her very well. You see, I'm the Joey she's looking for, and right now, I'm very scared and confused. Until recently, this deceptive little body was my playground. Rebecca is a natural-born redhead. She has milky skin and the freckles that go with it. She lied about her height for most of her life. When we first started dating, she told me that she was 5 feet 1 inch. Our first trip to an amusement park revealed the truth. As we approached the roller coaster, the teenager operating the ride noticed that, although Rebecca was drinking beer, she was noticeably under 5 feet. The safety line was a problem. He politely asked her how tall she was. 51, she said, squeezing my hand. "Could you come to the board, ma'am?" He asked again, polite and professional. "For what?" Rebecca asked sharply. "Ma'am, I could lose my job if I break safety rules, and I'm not sure you're tall enough," he replied nervously. People in line behind us were starting to get nervous, including Rebecca's 14-year-old niece, Collie, and her friend who had come to the park with us. "Come on, Aunt Beck," Collie said. "I want to ride the roller coaster." Rebecca walked up to the line, trying to stand on her tiptoes so it wouldn't be so noticeable. There was at least an inch of space between her head and the safety line. "You're too short. Come back next year, baby," someone muttered behind us. I knew what happened next. Rebecca was usually as quiet as a fawn, very soft and kind, but her face suddenly turned as red as her hair, and her beautiful green eyes sparkled. Then I smiled because I had seen this before. But back then, I didn't yet know how dangerous this little woman could be. "Great," she screamed. "I didn't even want to ride your damn roller coaster. Next weekend, I'm going to Cedar Point and riding some real roller coasters. Wait for us, Aunt Beck." Collie shouted as she and her friend got into the ride's trailer. She looked at me. "I'll be here when you get back, Joey," she said. "I can't go either," I said. "The equation doesn't converge." "Let me guess," she said. "Being an engineer, you calculated the weight of the cars, the speed of the slides, the diameter of the turns, and the height of the climbs and decided that it was unsafe to ride, right?" "No, everything's simpler," I answered. "Factor 1, I love you, Beck. Factor 2, we will always be together. So 1 + 1 = 2 of us on Earth." Her eyes filled with tears. I knew she hated crying in public, so I added little girl. "I'm not little," she said loudly. In fact, she's 411 tall. Her thick red hair is full of waves and curls that hang almost to her waist. Sometimes I think this hair has nerves and can feel something. When we first started living together, it made me understand that, in addition to her body and heart, I also own her hair and must take care of it. This meant spending a lot of time combing it and untangling the knots when she got out of the shower. And almost every time I combed her hair, we had a night. It got to the point where our friends would tell her not to get her hair done if we were going to their house because we probably wouldn't show up. You can't tell when she's wearing clothes, but Rebecca has quite large breasts. It looks awkward on her tiny body, but they're so soft that her clothes feel like they're squeezing her. The first time I saw her without anything, I was shocked. Her fifth place is pretty too, as the room fills with happy people, some looking for a mate, and others just looking to have fun. It seems increasingly closed off. A couple of very nice women in costumes that leave little to the imagination try to get me to dance with them. Maybe later I told them. They were very kind, very drunk, and very beautiful. But I came here tonight either to clear my doubts and move on with the woman I love, or if that fails, just move on. You see, something happened to Rebecca a few days ago that made me question whether we have a future. At this point, I have more questions than answers. Not only about what happened, but also about what it means for us. Before I continue, I should say that this is not where it all started, but this is where it started for me. I know saving the world is probably important, but for me, my personal problems are the main thing. I work in a manufacturing facility in Madison Heights, Michigan. We make all kinds of parts for any company that signs a contract with us. Our only principle is to get paid. So, we make parts for General Motors one week and for the Italian company Chrysler the next. My shifts change monthly, and this month, I was supposedly working the night shift. Unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on whose point of view you look at it, we lost power to the entire complex 15 minutes before my shift started. After shedding a few tears over a lost night of production, I sent my crew home. As images of my favorite little redhead started dancing in my head, I jumped into my Honda and raced home. I was about 3 blocks from the house I shared with Beck when I noticed her Fusion driving through the intersection. I knew my woman, or at least I thought so, and she wasn't driving like she usually did. She was flying. Beck was a little afraid of driving, so she usually drove slowly like an old woman. Her parents died in a car accident, and she didn't get her driver's license until she was 22. I wondered why she didn't call me to tell me she was going somewhere. Then, I decided that maybe it was something urgent and she was in a hurry. I decided to follow her to find out what was going on. She stopped in front of a house that was unfamiliar to me. There were several old men standing there, looking suspicious, and she walked straight up to one of them. The 4 of them went into the house. Nothing made sense. I thought maybe these old people were her family friends or relatives, but I seemed to know all her relatives, and I didn't recognize these people. I was confused. I didn't know if I should go up to the house and knock on the door, or wait and see what happened. I didn't think she would be there long, so I decided to wait and see. After about 20 minutes, the idea occurred to me to call her. I dialed her number, and it rang for a long time until the answering machine came on. Beck didn't usually ignore my calls. I got out of the car and walked up to the house. I looked out the window and saw her with 3 or 4 dirty, disheveled old men having an intim. My fists reflexively clenched and unclenched when I saw this. My mouth dropped open in shock. The same woman who swore eternal love to me and said she didn't experiment in intimate because she was not like that, did it with God knows who. This made me angry and even more puzzled. I must admit that, at that moment, I was not thinking about the future. Watching this with horror and tears streaming down my cheeks, I began to think about my future. I suddenly realized that I no longer had one. At least, not with the woman I had recently married. I had seen enough, so I started moving away from the window. I got into the car and drove away. I drove around the city for a long time without a specific goal, just driving while my mind wandered. I drove for hours until I realized I had been driving all night. In fact, it was almost time for me to wake up. I had several decisions to make. I knew I needed to find a lawyer the next day. As much as it seemed like a good idea at the time, I began to regret marrying Beck. If we had just continued living together, I might have just left. But pressure from her family, and even my own insecurities, forced me to propose. I still remember that conversation as if it was yesterday, not almost a year ago. We were lying on the back deck of our house that we had built together. It took us several months off work because we weren't professional builders. A simple desire and many educational videos from YouTube helped us. That evening, As we lay under the stars, sharing a bottle of Dos Equis on the terrace we built ourselves, I realized that this little red-haired woman in my arms was the most important being in my universe. "Beck, will you marry me?" I asked. I don't know if it was the desperation in my voice, the thought that without any legal basis, she might ever leave, or if she too had already begun to succumb to external pressure, but she responded quickly. "Joey, I've been waiting for you to say this since the moment I first saw you," she said quietly. "In my heart, I was your wife from those very 5 minutes after we met. I love you so much that I don't think I can live without you. But if you really want to spend a lot of our money to please our relatives and feed them, yes, dear, I will marry you." I sat up and looked at her. At that moment, I was filled with such love for her that it seemed to me no one had ever felt this way about a woman in all of history. Okay, maybe I'm exaggerating, but you know what I mean? I looked in her eyes and saw only love for me. But I saw something else there, and it scared the crap out of me. When I looked into my lover's eyes, for a moment, I thought I saw a fire in those big green eyes that I adored. I blinked, and it disappeared, but a chill ran down my spine. I thought I saw something I shouldn't have seen. I chalked it up to the reflection of the moon in those big, beautiful eyes. It must have been that. Yes, Beck had a temper, but there was nothing evil about her. She rarely even cursed. I put that memory away and turned my thoughts back to the car and my plans. As soon as I woke up the next afternoon to get ready for work, I would have to find myself a lawyer. I needed a very good one, and urgently. After what I just saw, I couldn't stay with her. 6 months ago, the spirits moved in the darkness of the full moon. There were many spirits here, and most of them were very old, bound to the earthly plane. Some stayed behind to look after their loved ones. Others stayed because they were filled with anger at what had happened to them while they were still alive. These spirits became stronger over time. In the spirit world, physical laws work differently. Things like anger and intention become sources of power. On this particular spring evening, a rare alignment of a certain group of stars superimposed on the full moon, making the veil between dimensions thinner than it had been in over 400 years. Someone much older than any spirits had reached from other worlds to make contact and thus establish a connection with the spirit world. However, this was only the first uncertain step in the creature's plan. "Bridget Bishop, can you hear me?" A voice rang out, sounding like the rustling of leaves on the ground. People and animals in the area reacted to the voice. A chill ran down the people's spines, and all but the bravest felt fear. Some ran, not understanding what made them do it. The brave ones prepared to fight, although there was no one around with whom they could fight. The animals, on the other hand, simply ran and kept running until they felt safe. "Bridget Bishop, you were the first victim, the most evil," the voice shouted through the space of the universe. "You were the first to die due to the sheer stupidity of the crowd and the greed of a few people. Even the spirit that the voice was trying to contact could be contacted or lured, TBA. You were the first to be unfairly put on trial for witchcraft." "Check your facts," the spirit replied. "My facts are correct, dead man," the voice responded. Its mission was accomplished as soon as Bridget's vanity forced her to respond. All the creature needed was for someone, anyone, to answer its call to complete the circle and establish a connection with the spirit world. Bridget Bishop, who responded, provided this. The creature wanted to go further. Although TBA was convicted, she confessed she was sold into slavery and lived out her life in Tiba. Although not very powerful, Tiba was still a witch. Her abilities came from the teachings of her homeland and were akin to voodoo. The rustling intensified. If there were living beings nearby, it would seem to them that the wind was pronouncing words. Is it ironic, Bridget Bishop, that although you were not a witch, you were the first to die? You died because you were a very powerful woman. You, like many women in this era, knew everything except how to keep your mouth shut. The men with power and authority in your own city saw you as a threat and wanted what you had. That's why they called you a witch and took everything you created. The creature fed on the waves of anger emanating from Bridget. Your lands, where you grew such juicy fruits, are now occupied by a restaurant. The street stand where your land once was a land that should rightfully belong to your descendants. But you have no descendants, do you? Asked the creature. If you believe in the power of numbers, little witch, now is your time. 321 years have passed since you were killed. 321 is the sequence of destruction. This year, and only this year, can you undo what has been done to you? Yes. Bridget shouted. You can return everything that was taken from you. The voice hissed. Yes. Yes. Bridget screamed louder. You will be able to gain a human body and walk the earth again. The voice sang joyfully. Oh yes. Bridget shouted. You can take revenge on the souls of those who did this to you. Yes, the voice responded. Yes. Bridget exclaimed in delight. But wait, the voice said softly. You're not really a witch, are you? But Bridget's essence stammered. It doesn't matter, said the voice. I can teach you what you need to know. Let's start with the fact that you need strength. Right now, you're just an angry, powerless loser. To get what you seek, you must be 1,000 times more powerful than you are now. Every spell you master will give you power. Every alliance you make will bring you help. But to make deals with the darkness, you need power. But how can I gain strength? Bridget asked. They don't gain strength, the voice answered sharply. It's not something you go out and buy like soda. The power must be seized. It needs to be snatched from those who have it, and all this time they will try to take yours. There are those who are connected to you through past events. If you appropriate their power, you will become 3 times stronger than you are now. Tuba and Giles Corey. Exactly, Bridget said, but they are just as strong as you, the voice sang. It takes several steps to gain their power. First, you need an ally on the earth plane. You need someone to act as your agent until your power grows enough to influence the physical world. I have someone in mind. Reach out your thoughts and call the one we are looking for, said the voice. Mason DL wielded the gurney into the x-ray room. We chatted about baseball with an 88-year-old man lying on a gurney. I introduced him to a technician who would take x-rays of his chest, ribs, right elbow, and hip. Bobby will take care of you, Mr. Jenkins, I told him, even as I left the room. My phone rang, and it made me smile. I pulled out my iPhone and looked at the screen. I quickly ran out of the room and headed down the corridor. I went into one of the staff break rooms to take a break. Hello? I said into the phone. I thought I was out of luck today, but now I have a nun. I joked. It was a terrible pun, but I knew it would make her laugh. I seem to spend too much time in cemeteries, she replied. My heart starts beating faster when I hear the dead guy's voice. Hearing your voice makes me want my heart to beat again, I said. I love you. I don't know what you did to me, she said, piety in her voice. But I've never felt anything like this for anyone ever. I replied, I just wanted to hear your voice before we go hunting for the Neo. Piety said, where the hell are you? I asked sharply, I always worry about you when you're in the field in Canada. Honey, she answered. I heard the pleasure in her voice. This is where the woe is kept, you know. Why do you sound so damn cheerful? I asked. Because someone cares about me enough to get angry and worried when I do my job. That's cute, she chirped. But don't worry, my son. Everything sacred is on my side. Besides, I don't think there are any woes left here. No one has seen them for over 100 years. It probably won't be any worse than that werewolf we were chasing last week. It turned out that it was just a bear attacking tourists in the park for food. This bear somehow got rabies. This monster threw us from side to side and scratched us. Finally, we surrounded him on 3 sides and dealt with him. 1 point for the angry nun, I laughed. Tell Big Green that I owe her for protecting my angel. Ooh, she creaked. Do you see an angel in me? Yes, but you say it like it's good, I laughed. This is very good. I love being your angel, she said. Then you didn't read the Bible very carefully, I laughed. What do you mean? She asked. Pity. Angels are not what people imagine them to be. Every time God wanted to destroy someone, he sent an angel. So, go and deal with this when they go, and then come to me. I miss you. Even though I'm immortal, I can't wait forever. It's only been a week, she said. Rebecca's day started out terrible and got worse every hour. To begin with, I woke up and felt that no one was nearby. Our bed is a cozy one with a high headboard. She's not very big, but I always felt comfortable waking up in Joey's arms. But this time, He was as far away from me as possible on this bed. One of his legs dangled over the edge. I thought that if I just pushed him a little, he would fall to the floor. I sniffed my armpits because I couldn't remember if I had showered the night before. I smelled clean and soapy. Moreover, my skin was still slightly damp, as if I had just stepped out of the shower again. My legs felt strange, as if they had been held in an extended position for a long time. My whole body felt like I had just had a very rough night, which was strange because I had never had rough intim. I wouldn't like it. I had only been with one man before Joey, and he was an awkward young guy I met in college. The idea of letting some guy turn what should be an act of love into some brutal, fist-pounding event didn't appeal to me. I love my Joey. I love the gentle and affectionate things he does for me. At that moment, I couldn't think of anything more desirable. I reached out my hand to stroke his hair, but he pulled away in his sleep as if he was uncomfortable. I had never seen Joey react to my touch like that. He must have been having some kind of nightmare. For some reason, I felt really bad. It seemed as if I had somehow disappointed him, but I couldn't understand why. He told me he didn't want to have dinner, and then I was very tired last night. The last thing I remember was him kissing me goodnight and wrapping me in a blanket before leaving for work. He was probably upset about something that happened at work. I wondered why he was taking it out on me. When he wakes up, I will talk to him. Bridget extended her essence, as she had been taught. It was difficult in many ways at first. For most of her life, she was a typical woman of her time. She was raised in the church, taught to believe in God and fear evil. But that didn't help her. Where was her God when she was hanged? Bridget's essence touched something. It wasn't completely human, at least not anymore. The creature was much older than people like Bridget herself. It was over 100 years old and wore clothes from times long past. There was an old-fashioned hat on its head and a cane in its hand. Bridget wasn't sure, but she couldn't remember the last time she had seen someone with a cane. As she had been taught, Bridget began to probe the creature's mind. She knew what to say. After all, she and this monster had a lot in common. Both wanted revenge. The creature seemed to want revenge on the three nuns. The nuns had destroyed the creature's descendants, and it hated women for this. It also believed that if the nuns continued their actions, they would destroy more of its kind, and they might end up killing it too if it wasn't careful. These women were also supported by the church and had several magical or sacred artifacts in their possession. The creature decided that it wouldn't hurt to have its own magical support. It was willing to serve Bridget in exchange for her help in the fight against the nuns. Thus, the most unholy alliance was concluded. The creature did not know that the contract between them would be temporary at best. Bridget and the creature's plans would soon diverge, as Bridget had her own plans for one of the nuns. The next night, they began to act. Bridget reached out with her essence and found the spirit of another woman who had been convicted of witchcraft. This woman was a real witch. Her spirit told Bridget's entity that she had never done anything evil. She simply used her knowledge of herbs and plants to make ointments to treat pain in her family. Sometimes, she made such ointments for her neighbors and friends. She never worshipped the devil or believed in anything other than her Lord Jesus. Bridget laughed to herself at the woman's stupidity. Strength is strength, she thought. Bridget used sweet words to win over the woman's spirit. She promised that if the woman told her where she was buried, Bridget would take care of her grave and regularly place fresh flowers. The woman told her. Bridget relayed this information to her vampire familiar. A few minutes later, the vampire went to the unmarked grave, dug up the remains of the woman, and burned them. The ancient which experienced such agony that she could not have imagined it when she first died. Her spirit did not go to heaven, hell, or limbo. Instead, it had been for the last 300 years simply lost in nothingness as if she had never existed. But in the process, Bridget absorbed her power. I already feel stronger, Bridget thought. 1 down, 99 to go. The voice told Bridget that in order to gain the power she needed, she would have to take it from other witches. Until this moment, Bridget had never considered herself a witch, just as the unfortunate woman whose spirit she had just destroyed had not considered herself one. I don't care what they call me, Bridget said, her voice sounding like the rustle of the wind. If burning witches gives me what I want, it'll burn them all. That night, Bridget burned 2 more weak witches. That's how it all really started. My name is Sarah Price. I'm the best at what I do. Now I am tormented by jealousy. After handling so many divorce and infidelity cases, it finally hit me. My husband, my significant other, is spending time with another woman. The worst part is that he does it in front of me. Sometimes I feel like he doesn't even understand how much it hurts me to see his face after he's been with her. He smiles that same wide smile that he used to give only to me. His eyes glow, and his smile looks like it could rip his face in half at any moment. The worst part about it all is that I love her too, but for Chris, it's all on a completely different level. They may have taken our daughter, Chara, out of my body, but she spends the rest of her time in her father's arms. Chris went from nervous newbie dad to baby expert literally overnight. At this point, I'm not even sure that he completely trusts me to take care of her. When our friends or family come to visit to see the baby, Chris literally gives them a minute-by-minute breakdown of how long they can hold her. When someone picks her up, Chris sits next to her, and after some strange number of seconds, he takes her back. I have no doubt that she will become a daddy's girl. When she cries, as soon as he takes her in his arms, she immediately calms down. Today is my first day back at work after maternity leave. Chara is 6 months old, and I brought her crib to the office. My assistant, Pam, has been hired to take care of Chara while I work on cases. She's also very computer savvy, so she can help me with information when needed. The only thing she can't do is pronounce my daughter's name correctly. She calls her Chara, pronouncing it Cha, as in cha-cha. My daughter's name is pronounced Kara, meant to combine her father's name, Chris, with mine, Sarah. As I was explaining this to Pam again, a crash came from the office next door. I ran there to see what happened. A short, fat guy was grappling with a couple of our employees who deal with the smallest matters. "Okay, who's bigger here?" I asked loudly. After a few seconds, all 3 men stopped and looked at me. "He just went crazy," said Sam Bradford, one of our junior detectives. "This idiot called my wife a woman of easy virtue," spat the short man. "I'm not going to pay a person to talk about her like that." "Sam, come to my office immediately," I said. Sam followed me. When we entered the office, Sam began to make excuses. "Mrs. Price," he called her a woman of easy virtue. "He thinks she's cheating on him and wants us to gather evidence for a divorce. And this is your first and last lesson in professional ethics, Sam," I said. "The client can call his spouse whatever he wants, but we must always be professionals. You should never, under any circumstances, call anyone offensive names. Is everything clear?" "Yes, ma'am," he replied. We returned to the next office, and I invited the client to join me. I sat him down opposite me and offered him hot coffee, which he took without sugar or milk. I gave him a few minutes to calm down. He took a few sips, and I noticed the symptoms. His hands were shaking slightly. His look, body language, and movement said the same thing. This man was in shock. Even his face showed a lot. He was a man who had been used to smiling, but now only pain turned his face into a neutral mask. "Tell me your story," I said, and he began to speak. He told me about 2 people who loved each other. I was weak for such stories. In some ways, it was reminiscent of my own story with Chris. Okay, I took over. Chris and I had our problems, but after his divorce, everything felt very similar. Only in his case, for an inexplicable reason, their love faded, and it literally tore the poor man apart. Like most men, Joey didn't want to hurt his wife or leave her destitute. He just wanted to end the suffering. I agreed to take on his case. I smiled thinking about it. I usually handle weird or high-profile cases. So, for my first case back from maternity leave, I thought it would be great to handle a routine divorce case. I thought I would need several days or nights of observation to gather evidence. We might have to fake his fake trip out of town, but in a week or less, I'd have this done. Bridget, over the past few weeks, had become much stronger than she could have ever imagined. She had absorbed the spirits and powers of over 40 witches. She no longer felt remorse about it. At first, she had worried a lot about taking power from other witches and sending their souls into oblivion, but her nameless mentor explained that this was the lesser of 2 evils, and in a sense, she was even doing them a favor. They didn't serve any purpose anyway, just hanging around cemeteries and abandoned houses. Some witches had to be coaxed or tricked into giving up their final resting places. Others were so fed up with their existence that they voluntarily gave up their locations. Either way, Burning witches and absorbing their power became something she craved and loved. She liked the rush of new strength. She loved the smell of burning bones that filled the air. Plus, she was learning more and more witchcraft. She absorbed some knowledge from the witches she burned, but most of it came from the voice. She still had a few regrets. Burning Tuba and Giles Corey had been unpleasant but necessary. As a result of her recent acquisitions, she noticed that she was becoming so powerful that she could influence things in the material world. Very soon, she would no longer need the services of the vile vampire, who called himself Papa Chalu. However, she would still keep him around, partly because she needed to conserve her strength. Any impact on the material world took a lot of energy, but also because she needed to increase the power level of the witches she was going to attack next. Some of them were still alive and much more powerful than anyone she had encountered before. Some of these women and men didn't even realize they were witches. Living witches proved challenging. She had a few setbacks, but that was before she reached her current levels of power. The most humiliating failure had been with women who didn't even know they were witches. There was one terrible woman Bridget came across. She was riding in one of those huge trucks. The idiot just sat there, watching the world go by. She kept screaming and arguing with the man who was driving, but it was obvious they loved each other. Bridget realized that her irritated remarks and constant nagging were her special way of showing love. Chance, damn it. How many times have I told you that I don't want to hear your country music? She exploded. Are you crazy? The man answered. His lips hinted at a smile, and there was clearly a gleam in his eyes meant only for her. This is not village music. This is not country music, and not even bluegrass. This is Gordon Lightfoot. If You Could Read My Mind is one of the most beautiful songs ever written, he said. Chance, if you could read my mind, this is what you would hear. A husband who won't get an intimate until his wife gets her way, she replied with a grin. She looked at him and crossed her arms over her chest. He immediately changed the radio station. I love you too, idiot, she said, and even when she spoke to him, her hands were already reaching out to him. At that moment, I decided to try to contact her. This stupid since my attempt to make contact. I felt in her thoughts that she felt me. Of course, she took this as a headache because she didn't even know about her strength or how to use it. This scoundrel didn't even bother to respond to me. She just threw me away like spitting out a bad taste after eating something sweet. No matter how hard I tried, I could no longer penetrate her mind. She just blocked me. When I become stronger, I will take her power just like everyone else's. Then there was another woman in the South. She was at least as strong as the one in the truck, but even more confident. She called herself Savannah, and she must have been incredibly powerful. She married one of her own kind and even had children with him. This one turned out to be so strong that I couldn't even get close to her mind. I was nothing more than a mosquito bite to her. She waved me off without even noticing. I thought about sending the vampire after her. I was so angry, but since I acquired the ability to set fire to the bones of dead witches without outside help, I kept him busy with other things. The only person I came across who knew she was a witch was an older woman. Well, at least older than the other two. She was probably in her 40s. Her name was Angela, or something like that, but she knew exactly who she was and what she was doing. She cast some kind of spell that blocked me from even visual contact, let alone the ability to establish a connection. She just laughed at the thought of me wanting to take her power. So I went back to absorbing power from dead witches, but very soon I would become much stronger than everyone alive, and I would come back for these scoundrels too. In the meantime, my vampire familiar, Papa Chalu, would continue to gather allies. Sarah's story today, Chris stayed home with the baby, and I had time to observe my new target. The way Joey talked about her, I expected a supermodel. It's funny how men perceive women. Joey keeps saying how beautiful she is, but all I see is a short red-haired woman with large breasts. My cousin Savannah is much more beautiful, and my cousin Evie and my aunt Angela, she puts both of them to shame, and neither of them looks so out of proportion. It seems to me that from a male point of view, as with television, there's no such thing as too big a chest. However, when I look at her, I see a lot, but I don't see anything amazing about her. Honestly, I'm not sure she's tall enough to be allowed on a roller coaster. Poor Joey is clearly infatuated with petite redheads. Once I catch this one, he may have to head to West Virginia to find another one. There they grow like weeds. I know what I'm saying. Around 11 o'clock in the evening, Joey left for work. I saw that it was difficult for him to avoid a farewell kiss from his wife. I'm sure he's torn between his love for her and what he saw. I intend to finish this matter today and spare him any further suffering. About 20 minutes after he left, Rebecca left the house. While watching her, I noticed that something was wrong with her. I took the binoculars out of the glove compartment and focused on her face. Something definitely seemed strange about her, but I couldn't put my finger on it. I was a few houses away, but my binoculars made it easy to follow her. The main advantage of these binoculars is that they can record images directly to an SD card. When Sony first released these, everyone wondered who would pay $1,400 for something like this. Apparently, they were targeting private detectives and ornithologists. This is a highly specialized product, but since I'm in that niche, I'm excited about them. Since I was 3 houses further away than she was, she didn't pay attention to me. Even if she had noticed, she got into the car and drove out into the empty streets. When I took on this case, I asked Joey to tag her car. I turned on my iPad and opened the tracking app. Since it's linked to Google Maps, I could even get directions to her location using my electronic devices. It was much easier than trying to follow someone with their headlights off. I gave her a 3-minute head start and then followed her. Joey and Rebecca lived in a pretty nice neighborhood, but the streets we were driving along no longer seemed so pleasant. I looked at the iPad and saw that her car had stopped. I noticed her about a block away from me. The car was parked on a street with a couple of bars and a liquor store. I saw Rebecca get out of the car. I knew for sure that something was wrong with her, but I still couldn't figure out what it was. She walked a couple of blocks and stopped in front of a large electronics store. I started recording her actions without looking around to make sure no one was nearby. She picked up from the ground a large piece of stone that had fallen off the old sidewalk. The stone was clearly heavy, but her tiny hands lifted it easily. This also seemed strange to me. I'm taller than Rebecca and in great physical shape. I've worked hard over the past 6 months to get back in shape after having my baby, and I am now in the best shape of my life, but even I'm not sure I could lift this stone with one hand. Rebecca not only picked it up, but also threw it forcefully into the store window, breaking the glass and setting off the alarm. Several homeless people who were warming themselves by a burning metal barrel nearby heard the crash and the sound of the alarm and ran toward the store. Rebecca, meanwhile, calmly walked on, not looking back at the mess she had made. Some of the homeless people reached through the broken window, pulling out small items that could be quickly sold. Those who were inside grabbed boxes with larger goods. I followed Rebecca at a safe distance, hiding in the shadows so as not to be seen. 3 more homeless people followed her. I continued to record what was happening. It was obvious that Rebecca knew she was being followed. She turned into a narrow alley that ran along a residential area. One of the men patted her as they walked. She stopped in the middle of the alley. I've seen people do things I would never have expected them to do. I saw teachers and priests' wives having a night in cheap hotels. I saw 50-year-old men cheating on their wives with young girls. You never know what a person is capable of when driven by passion, but it didn't look right watching Rebecca serve 3 men in an alley. I suddenly realized that this was not a matter of passion. No illegal substances had anything to do with it. Even under their influence, people move naturally. They may not remember what they did later, but their movements remained smooth. Here, everything was different. I zoomed in with the binoculars and noticed for the first time that her eyes were too wide open. She didn't blink at all. I recorded enough footage, so I turned off the recording. Joey needed proof, not an adult film. If he saw too much footage of his wife having an intim with strangers in an alley, it might push him into doing something that I didn't want on my conscience. When she finished, she simply stood up and left, getting dressed as she went. I watched in surprise as she walked down the street without even buttoning her clothes. As she approached the next intersection, she caught the attention of another homeless man who was holding a sign asking for donations from passing drivers. He was so distracted that he dropped his sign. She took several bills from her skirt pocket. The man started to cross the street, but she stopped him with a gesture. Finally, she turned around and beckoned him with her finger. Even when she motioned for him to come, I felt something was wrong again. Her movements were too sudden, like those of a doll. When I realized what was happening, it was too late to save the man. His passion for Rebecca clouded his mind. He was so focused on her that he didn't notice anything else. As he stepped onto the road, he was hit by an SUV. The driver of the SUV had no idea that the man was about to enter the road. He slammed on the brakes, turning the 3-ton vehicle so sharply that the rear end almost lifted off the ground. But it was too late. I quickly dialed 911. There was nothing that could be done for the homeless man, but perhaps they could save the driver. He got out of the car and didn't look good. Even as I heard sirens in the distance, Rebecca walked toward me, heading back to where she came from. I ducked through the door and entered an abandoned building. As Rebecca approached me, she suddenly stopped and looked around. She let out a piercing scream, so sharp that it couldn't have come from a human throat. "I feel you there, little witch. You don't even know who you are, do you? Luckily for you, I don't have time for you right now, but let's play." I looked out from behind the door and noticed that Rebecca's mouth was open. She didn't speak. Her mouth didn't move, but the words still came out. "The next time we meet, little witch, I will burn your bones and take your power for myself. But today I'm just going to give you a little toast as a goodbye. See you soon." She shrieked again. She left, and small but hot flames began to flare up around me. Smoke rose. I rushed to the back of the room, trying to find another way out. My lungs filled with smoke, and Rebecca's voice, quieter with every step, reached me until she and whatever controlled her disappeared. Because of the smoke and darkness, I couldn't see anything. I coughed several times and struggled to breathe. Remembering that I had binoculars with infrared mode, I pointed them at the walls. The door through which I entered had disappeared. I felt myself growing weaker. Was this something that would take me away from my husband and child? I pulled out my gun and knocked on the wall until I felt wood. I kicked it several times until it gave way and then lunged at it just before I lost consciousness. Similar events were occurring across the country with alarming frequency. Several very powerful vampires had teamed up. They were joined by several werewolves who had strayed from the pack. They had never met before, had no common history, and nothing connected them to each other except that they had all recently spoken with Papa Chalou. He promised each of them something different, and they were all willing to put aside their mutual hatred and distrust in order to help Papa Chalou achieve his goals. None of them knew that Chalou's goals were not his own, and Chalou himself did not know that his mistress' goals were not really hers either. In the suburbs of Chicago, Bridget hovered above a garage. She didn't understand why she was here, but the witch living here was extremely powerful. The energy either increased or decreased, and there was a feeling that there were several sources, and they were of different frequencies. Bridget had learned a lot during her weeks of searching, but now it seemed to her that she knew nothing. The source of power seemed both alive and dead. She extended her mind into a medium-sized house and found two people, a man and a woman, sleeping inside. None of them had even a drop of magical power. Bridget screamed in frustration, and the wind responded to her disappointment. She cast her mind further, and as soon as it touched the garage over which her spirit hovered, she heard a sound so loud and ominous that it was like the slamming of the gates of hell closing. Even in her ethereal state, Bridget shuddered. Suddenly, the metal of the garage door bent outward, and a car flew out, destroying the door in the process. A bright yellow Mustang with black racing stripes sped down the road faster than Bridget could follow. Sometimes spirits become attached to objects, Bridget thought. It was obvious that a very powerful spirit was associated with the car. Bridget wanted this power, but even more, she needed to understand it. She didn't know where the car was now, but she would definitely find it. 200 or 300 miles from Chicago, but still in the Great Lakes region, a large man walked out of the manufacturing plant where he worked. The other man followed him, and they headed toward the parking lot. "Are you sure you need 3 weeks of vacation at once?" the smaller man asked. "Hell yes," the large man laughed. "I need to go back to nature for a while, dude. I don't understand you. All summer, when there was a terrible heat and everyone else took vacation, you survived. And now that the weather has cooled down and it's livable, you want to leave?" the smaller man said, shaking his head. Billy got into an old model pickup truck. The large man, whose name was John, spoke then, although there was no one around. He spoke as if there were someone there. Yes, I feel it too. Something terrible is coming. And this time it's serious, he said. As if in response to his words, the wind rose and ruffled his long black hair. It seemed as if the wind was gently caressing him. Sarah, when I woke up, not much time had passed. I realized this by the fact that the sirens were getting louder, but they weren't here yet. I stood up and dusted myself off. I looked around for Rebecca, but she had disappeared. I took out my iPhone and checked Rebecca's license plate number. She was already in the car and driving. She seemed to be heading home. I couldn't believe that the plump little red-haired housewife, whom I suspected of having an affair with the butcher or something like that, could do the things she had done. Breaking a store window is one thing, but killing a homeless man with a car was completely beyond the pale. I didn't know what to say to her husband. On one hand, something was clearly controlling her, but I didn't understand what exactly. I'd heard that people can be hypnotized into doing things, but I'd also heard that hypnosis cannot make a person do something that they would not do in normal life. Hypnosis should simply reduce their internal barriers, not turn them into murderers. Frankly, I was out of my element. This incident was too strange, even for me. I drove back to her house, just in time to see Rebecca get out of the car and walk into her house in the pre-dawn darkness. I went home and went to bed with my sleeping husband. He rolled over and hugged me, and we both fell asleep. Everything was right again in my world. Once Chris held me, nothing else mattered. Somewhere in the middle of the night, my cell phone rang. I barely realized it. I thought they would leave a message. A short time later, the home phone rang. Let them leave a message too. The next morning, I woke up and prepared breakfast for Chris and Chara. Everything was fine until I came to the office and checked my messages. I realized that my fatigue and the fact that I almost died in a fire had temporarily clouded my mind. The first message on my cell phone was from Joey. He called twice, first on my mobile, then on the office line. Sarah, this is Joey, he said in the first message. Did you find anything? Maybe I was wrong. Maybe it wasn't her. And what the hell? Hey, you're having some problems, Sarah? I'll call you back later. There's some idiot here who needs to be taught a lesson. His voice was irritated and full of confidence. The second time he called the office, he sounded scared. Sarah, I need to run. Something is chasing me. I can't go home because I don't want this thing to get close to Beck, so all I heard after that was some sounds and rumbling, and then another voice came on the phone. HM, the guy seems out of shape right now, said a voice with a Caribbean accent. Then he laughed, but the laugh sounded as if it came straight from hell. Tell it to your little wife that we will contact her, and if she wants him back. Haha, was all he said before the connection was cut off. Crap, I screamed. How can you quit this business? As strange as it was, I couldn't leave him when my client wasn't there to tell him I'd left. Even though I was the best at what I did what every woman in trouble does. I called my husband. Chris, dear, I rang. Have Pam take Chara home and lock all the doors until this is over. If they're watching you, they probably won't follow her. We'll work from your office and stay away from home so that danger doesn't follow Chara. I'll be there in 20 minutes, he said. How did you know? I asked. Sarah, I love you, he said. I know all your movements and moods. I could tell from your voice that we were back in business. Besides, it's been 6 months since we've had something like this. To be honest, I started to get bored. Oh, and your aunt called you last night. Chris, I love you too, I said with admiration. Come as quickly as possible. What Aunt Angie wants will have to wait until we're done with this matter. Even as I said this, I felt it was a mistake. I felt a lot better knowing that Chris would be working with me on this strange case. I also knew that I had to take the next step. I jumped in the car and drove to Joey's house, calling Chris to let him know where I was going. When I got to Joey's house, I called the number he gave me for their home phone. The phone rang about 5 times before the answering machine went off. I dialed the number again, and on the third ring, a sleepy voice answered me. Hello? She said, her voice low and husky, especially for a woman as small as she was. There was no hint of the shrill voice I had heard the night before. She sounded tired, which, considering everything she'd done, made sense. Rebecca, get dressed. I'm already on my way to you. I'm right in front of your house, I said. Who the hell is this? She asked in surprise. Do we know each other? No, we don't know each other, I answered, but have a nice day, crazy girl. She hung up. I called back immediately. "Rebecca, is Joey home?" I asked as soon as she picked up the phone. She hesitated. "Where is he?" she asked. All traces of sleepiness immediately disappeared from her voice. I suddenly felt like I had to tell her everything that was happening. As soon as I started, a voice in the back of my mind told me to shut up and clear my thoughts. "We don't have much time to sort everything out, so get dressed," I said. She sighed irritably and said that she would be out on the porch in 10 minutes. My cell phone rang again, and I saw it was Aunt Angela. I let the call go to voicemail. I just didn't feel like discussing the family barbecue at the moment. I waited on the porch. A few minutes later, the door opened. Rebecca came out, clearly ready to fight. She looked me up and down, then looked at me suspiciously. I literally felt waves of anger and confusion emanating from her. "I should have known," she spat. "Now I'll beat you, and then I'll beat him too." "Rebecca, what are you talking about again?" I asked. "We really don't have time for all this nonsense. You're the one who started this nonsense," she said. Even as she said this, it was clear she wasn't used to swearing, but she was clearly very angry. I couldn't understand why, but she was obviously a bundle of conflicting emotions. I chalked it up to feeling guilty about everything she had just done. It was almost cute the way her pale skin turned red and tears welled up in her eyes. She then clenched her small fists and tried to hit me. I stepped back, feeling her small hand brush past my chest, and almost laughed. "Rebecca, I don't have time to be your little fifth place right now," I said confidently. Then she tried to hit me again. "I will kill you," she blurted out. "My Joey, you woman of easy virtue." I started laughing. The woman who went out and slept with tramps called me a woman of easy virtue. I put my hand on her forehead, like in those stoic movies, and let her hit the air. "Rebecca, we don't have time for this," I said again as she vented her anger. "Joey needs our help." She stopped immediately, and I swore her eyes sparkled. The next moment, I was already flying back. Rebecca was still standing there, but she was looking straight at me, and I was sure there was some kind of light hidden behind her green eyes. "Okay, you long, skinny, red-haired woman of easy virtue," she spat. "What the hell is going on?" I asked, breathless. "Strawberry blonde," I managed to croak. "What are you talking about, you stupid?" she hissed. "I'm not a redhead," I said with difficulty. "My hair is blonde with a few red strands." She looked at me as if I were an insect under a microscope. "Lying," she hissed. Suddenly, I was released, and I fell onto the porch, landing awkwardly on my butt. She started laughing. "What's so funny?" I asked, still confused about what had just happened. Rebecca came over to me and tried to help me up. "What's going on, Sarah?" she asked. "I didn't tell you my name," I said. She looked at me in confusion. "But I think I know everything about you now," she said. "I was so angry at you because I thought that with your height and beauty, I thought my Joey was cheating on me with you." She looked at me, but couldn't meet my gaze. "Sorry for getting into your head. I've never done this before. I didn't know I could do this. When I'm angry, everything seems to spin out of control. I think that's why I'm so paranoid about losing Joey." "Rebecca, Joey isn't cheating on you, not with me, not with anyone else," I said. "Now I know that," she replied. "And I know you're just as confused as I am. Sarah, I know you just gave birth to an adorable baby girl, and you love your husband too much to ever cheat on him. I even know that you lighten your hair because there are too many beautiful redheads in your family. But I still don't understand why you came here today. Rebecca, we need to talk, but first I have to get you to safety. Will you come with me to the office?" I asked. "Of course," she replied. "Now I trust you completely." Along the way, we had a light conversation while I tried to comprehend what had happened. I was still trying to come to terms with the fact that something had been controlling the little woman next to me for most of the previous night. I didn't know how to bring this up with her now. I also had to take into account the fact that she herself had some abilities. She had somehow lifted me into the air and nearly strangled me without moving. And then she had watched my thoughts as I leafed through a magazine. When we returned to the office, Chris was already there. I knew this because his Shelby GT500 was parked in my spot. Apparently, my husband was preparing for war. If he didn't think anything was going on, he would have arrived in his regular supercharged Mustang. But if he brought the GT500, it meant he was ready for anything. As soon as we entered the office, he immediately jumped to his feet. "Oh God," Rebecca said. I knew he was cute from your thoughts, but I didn't know he was this cute. Hey, Beck, we're here to figure out what happened to your husband, not for you to stare at mine, I said sharply. The door behind us suddenly opened, and 3 women ran into the room. Don't worry about her, said the eldest of the 3. She always gets angry when someone breathes near this man. The woman who spoke looked to be in her 40s, but she could have been 30. Like me, she was tall and slender. Her southern accent immediately put her at ease and made men lose their heads. Her long, thick hair hung just below her waist, and a light summer dress seemed out of place in the early autumn coolness. I think I was lucky she even wore shoes. Her smile lit up the whole room, and even my husband smiled when he saw her. Next to her stood another red-haired woman. Her hair had slight waves and curls, which gave it a lively dynamic. She didn't smile like the eldest, but carefully looked around the room, pretending she didn't notice anything special. Her jeans were freshly pressed and clearly expensive. She was as small as Rebecca, but even slimmer. No one would have guessed that she had already given birth to 2 children. It was clear from her appearance that she missed her husband, and all she could do was keep her hand away from her phone. She was wearing boots like the other 2, but hers clearly cost more than $1,000. The 3rd woman always amazed me. Her hair, the same red as the others, was cut asymmetrically. A long strand covered one eye, and a shorter part curled neatly behind her ear. She was wearing regular skinny Levi's jeans, so tight it was hard to imagine how she could even breathe, but she was breathing fine. The rise and fall was mesmerizing. She chewed gum and wore a t-shirt with some kind of giant truck on it. Her style was the most urban of them all, and the headphones dangling around her neck suggested that she would soon lose interest and become immersed in her music. One of my colleagues passing by the office took a double look at us and then walked into the room. "What the hell is going on here?" he asked. "Price, did you organize a convention of redheads?" Compared to these women, my hair stood out only because it was strawberry blonde. But Rebecca, although her hair was also red, looked paler compared to the fiery shades of the other 3 women. Damn, I thought. Her hair was just as red as ours before she started bleaching it. I said, her hoarse voice, tempered by cigarettes and beer. She probably drove crazy all the truck drivers who heard her on the radio. Unfortunately for them, she was faithful to only one thing, the one she married. "Sarah, I called you 3 or 4 times, and you didn't pick up," Aunt Angela reproached me. I gave her your messages. "Aunt Angela," my husband said cheerfully, smiling, "I was busy." "Aunt," I answered, throwing a withering look at my husband, "and working on a case now. Maybe you'd better go to my house and wait for us there." "Well, wait here, honey," Angela said. A chill ran down my spine. When my aunt had premonitions, something always happened. She had started preparing me and the whole family for her wedding to Uncle Mike almost a year before they met. 6 months after she started talking about him, Mike became her son's track coach, found out his wife was cheating on him, and fell head over heels for Aunt Angela. "Just pretend we're not here," Evie said. "Maybe if we're lucky, we won't be here." I hate standing still. She reached for her headphones, but my cousin Savannah gently removed her hand. "Can we start already?" Rebecca asked. "I really don't care that your family is here. It's strange, but I feel some kind of connection." "Okay, Rebecca," I said. "At first, you thought I was having an affair with your husband, Joey. What made you think that?" Before Rebecca could respond, Evie burst out laughing. Everyone looked at her. "Come on," she blurted out. "Just listen to how stupid this sounds. Sarah won't have an affair. Before I met Chris, I thought she was a robot. I don't even think she knew she had, well, what to do with it." "Okay, he'll shut up," Evie added. Rebecca began. "He's been acting different for about a week. He doesn't want me like he used to, and he's sad." "Rebecca, he loves you," I said. "He would never cheat on you, either with me or with anyone else. Especially with such bleached hair," I teased. I gave her an angry look. "Joey thought you cheated on him," I said. "I would never do that," Rebecca cried. "Never in my life. Never for anything." I turned on the recording from my binoculars on the monitor at the front of the room. Rebecca turned to look at the screen. "It's me," she said. "Why do you have a video of me?" "Just watch," I replied. We all watched the video. "I didn't do it," Rebecca said as we watched her break a store window. "It's not me." "Oh, it's you," Evie said. "I don't remember any of this," Rebecca said. A few minutes later, we got to the part where she was having a night with homeless people. My Aunt Angela turned away from the screen. Evie stepped closer to get a better look. Nobody said there would be a video for adults. She screamed, "Sarah, can I have a copy?" "Oh, wait until Chance sees this," she added. "Oh, am I talking too loud?" Rebecca started crying, and suddenly the monitor exploded. My Aunt Angela immediately came up to her and hugged her. Savannah hugged her too. "My God, what a woman of easy virtue," Evie screamed. She looked around and saw that everyone was staring at her. What? She screamed. "Am I the only one who saw this video?" "Evie, where's Chance?" I asked. "My cousin was too rude to be here when all this nonsense started," Angela said. "I convinced Greg to take him and Uncle Mike on an alligator fishing trip to Florida. That way, they will be safe from all this devilry. If only this would end already. I'm bored. Can I call Chance now?" Evie asked. "No," Angela answered sharply. "Rebecca, how long have you been a witch?" "How long have I been what?" Rebecca asked quietly, clearly feeling uncomfortable. "How long can you do what you do?" Angela asked. "Always," Rebecca answered. "But that only happens when I'm angry." "No," Angela said. "You just let it out when you're angry. It's always with you. It's part of you. We all have it. Some have more. Some have less." Savannah is starting to notice her abilities, but they aren't as strong as yours. Evie uses hers to do nasty things to women who try to pick up her husband at truck stops. Evie shrugged. "They get what they deserve," she said. "Poor Sarah doesn't even admit that she has anything special," Angela continued. "She thinks that her intuition, which helps her solve cases, is just her intellect." I didn't know what to answer to this. "Damn," Angela said suddenly. We all looked at her. My aunt was too well-mannered to say damn, even if her mouth was full of the word. "It's all part of one big plan," she continued. "Something is gathering strength out there. Some spirit or force is accumulating power. I don't know why it's doing this or what it will do when it reaches its goal." She tried to capture us all. She attacked Evie in her truck, but it didn't work because Evie is the queen in this truck. Her love for Chance, coupled with her hidden powers and absolute fearlessness in the machine, drove her away. The same thing happened with Savannah. She had a headache, and she dealt with it the way she deals with everything else. "You mean she turned Greg over and had an intimate with her?" Evie asked. "And being too loud again, huh?" she added. "When she came for me, everything was different," Angela continued. "I knew who she was and what she needed. I called these two, and when we discussed everything, we came here. We decided that if we fought, it would be from a place where our loved ones would be safe. But with Rebecca, it's different. I can't understand it. With Rebecca, it's more like a test drive." "What do you mean?" asked Angela. "When it came to the three of you, she or it wanted your strength, your abilities, your magic, or something like that. If she's building up power, she needs a place to put it when she's ready. Maybe she wanted to suck all the strength out of you and leave you to rot. But with Rebecca, she needs to host herself. Maybe she's just testing Rebecca the way my husband tests a car before he buys it. Perhaps that's why she forced Rebecca to do things she would never do, gradually gaining control. See what I mean when I talk about your abilities, Sarah?" Angela smiled. "We need a plan." "No," I said. "First, we need information. We need to find out who she is and what she needs. As soon as this becomes clear, then we'll make a plan." "I know how to get it," Angela smiled. "Capturing a body is almost the same as reading minds. It's all about concentration and strength. If Sarah is right, the spirit will try to take over Rebecca's body again tonight. We'll be with you, Rebecca, and when she tries this, you will do two things. First, you block her, and then you get a glimpse into her thoughts. These connections are always two-way. If she can get into your mind, the connection will allow you to see into her thoughts too. But I don't know how to do such things," said Rebecca. "And what does all this have to do with my Joey?" I turned on the message from my phone and played it for everyone. "It doesn't look like a woman," Evie said. "He sounds like one of those fake voodoo priests New Orleans is full of. Whoever he is, he's holding Joey. I think he's working together with this entity," I said. "It's obvious they took Joey to use him as leverage against Rebecca. So no harm will come to him. Why risk your best trump card? I will do whatever it takes to save my Joey," Rebecca said. "Just don't let me sleep with anyone this time, okay?" "Bridget, it's time to take the bodies," said a voice in my head. The binding ceremony must be performed on the night of the solstice. "Bodies?" I asked. "Do we need more than one?" The pause before answering told me everything I needed to know. I may have been a novice in the occult sciences, but I outwitted the men who thought I was stupid 300 years ago. This is perhaps one of the reasons I was hanged for witchcraft. Men couldn't stand the fact that a woman was superior to them in business. When they couldn't get me to marry one of them so they could then buy or steal my property and assets, I was accused of witchcraft. It had nothing to do with religion, just money and greed. I think humiliation and revenge for outdoing several local elites in business deals was also a motive. These gray-haired old men could not tolerate defeat, especially from a woman. They couldn't then, and they can't now. When I get my strength and a new body back, I will find the descendants of all these old people and kill every one of them. I will also destroy all their bones and take their souls. You only need one body, but a spare wouldn't hurt either. What will happen if the time comes and you cannot expel the woman's soul from this body? After all, she is a very powerful witch. To hold back all your new power, if you cannot get this body, the second one will also be useful, although not as durable, and it will help bind your vampire servant to you. I still didn't trust the voice, but I did believe some of what it said. Papa Chalu would love the opportunity to hunt the nun. Mason and I had just started to rise when the moon rose high in the sky. It wasn't a full moon yet, but it would be just in time for the kids to go trick-or-treating in a couple of nights. I went out onto the roof of my building to enjoy a rare free evening. I looked down at the people in the surrounding area. Some were relaxing on the porch, while others, both locals and tourists who had decided to go beyond the usual routes in New Orleans, hurried about their business. I don't know how long I watched, but quite a long time must have passed, because the cigar I lit was almost burnt out and would soon have burned my lips if it hadn't happened. My phone vibrated nearby, and I reached for it. Judging by the fact that it was already completely dark on the street, a lot of time had passed. I shook my head, wondering how someone like me could have gotten hooked by someone like her. For a long time, I considered myself doomed, damned, and disgusting, as one song says. I wondered if I was too lost to be saved, but somehow, in her eyes, in her arms, and Lord in her heart, I found my salvation. "Piti," I asked Mason. "This is Patience. We need your help." I heard the sounds of running and heavy breathing. Then there was silence. "Mason Beaumont, hurry up!" And silence again. Without thinking, I ran out of the apartment and jumped on my bike. The drive to Beaumont, Texas, usually took about 4 hours. On my bike, I could do it in 3, but judging by Patience's voice, I doubted I would make it. I grabbed the phone again as I got onto the freeway and dialed the number with one hand while continuing to drive at full speed. I called an old friend who flew smuggling flights for traffickers. It took me 20 minutes to get to his small private airstrip and another 20 seconds to negotiate the price. He asked for $10,000 for a flight that would have cost me no more than $2,200 on a regular plane. I agreed, and 25 minutes after receiving the call, we were already heading to the plane. As soon as we landed, I lowered the bike down the ramp and sped off into the night. I didn't know where to go or where to look. I tried calling Pat again. "Mason, we're hiding. Are you going?" We were surrounded. We hid in a church on the east side of town. "Patience, I'm already in town," I said quietly. "I need directions." "HHH," she replied. I was so quiet that I held my breath. "There are so many of them," she whispered. She gave me the directions, and I ran them through Google Maps. 10 minutes later, I was there, and I was furious. I saw a church, but it looked abandoned and was burning. I knew that vampires wouldn't go near the fire. I saw several large furry creatures that resembled overgrown dogs standing on 2 legs. I rushed toward the church, my bike roaring, letting them know I was coming. I kicked one of the furry monsters as I drove by, then jumped off the bike and ran as close to the burning church as I could. All my instincts screamed at me to run away from the flames, but I had to find Patience. One of the huge furry creatures jumped at me. I fought back. I saw 2 figures emerging from the darkness near the church. The larger figure was Patience, and she was in terrible shape. She was trying to carry another person. I grabbed the unconscious Patience from her arms. "Where is Pity?" I asked sharply. "He took her," she answered, barely audible. "You'll tell us everything on the road?" I said. "Now the main thing is distance. We won't all fit on your bike." She nodded. It was clear from her eyes that Patience could barely stand. She knelt down, and I placed Patience next to her. I walked to the nearest car I could find. It was an SUV, a big one. I used my strength to break the lock on the door, then put Patience in the back seat and lifted the other Patience into the front seat. I broke the ignition switch and started the car. Behind me, I heard a howl as the engine began to hum. I stepped on the gas pedal as two large furry figures emerged from the darkness ahead of us. Without thinking, I shot them down and sped into the night. For the first few miles, I was sure we were being followed, but when I got on the freeway, I realized we had pulled ahead. I headed back to the runway. The plane was still there. I quickly carried Patience on board, then returned to pick up Pat, who complained about being touched the whole way. After I agreed to another exorbitant price, the plane took off again. I knew I would feel better when they were on my territory. Let the one who started all this crap try to confront me on my land. Patience slept the entire flight. Patience woke up several times and looked around, but it was clear that she was barely holding on. When we landed, I called a taxi and drove to one of my apartments near the French Quarter. I tucked Patience in a bed and called the nurse I was working with to check on them. She looked at me, and for the first time, she was speechless. "Patience, wake up," I said sharply. "You are stronger than this. Where's Pity? What happened?" "We received a message about another werewolf," she began slowly. "We didn't take it seriously. Pity didn't tell you because she wanted to surprise you. We were only 300 miles from you, and she was going to stop by to see you. We went to the church as usual to begin our investigation." She looked at me with eyes that had seen too much death. "There were real werewolves there, Mason. They changed right in front of us, and it wasn't just one. There were 7 or 8 of them, and there were vampires with them. You know how difficult it is to deal with one vampire, and there were 3 of them. And Mason, I don't know how, but they entered the church. One of the vampires was so old and strong that he didn't burst into flames when he walked inside. He set fire to the church himself. Everyone who was inside died. We didn't stand a chance. We were cut off and surrounded, so we were forced to fight. The old vampire offered us a deal. He swore it would be a fair fight, 3 against him. If we win, they will let us go." Mason, it seemed like he knew in advance what we would do. He just looked at us and smiled. Then, looking at Pity, he suddenly became angry. "Mason," he spoke, "she, like you, is a sentient vampire, but filled with evil." He picked up Pity and looked into her face, then turned to us again. "What's going on here?" he asked. "I knew something was wrong when I watched you in New Orleans. It's not her. It's some kind of clone or something like that. If you want her back, if she is dear to you, bring me the real one to the place where you first killed one of my descendants." Then he left, taking Pity with him. He picked up Patience's phone before leaving. We tried to follow him, Mason, but because of this, werewolves attacked us. I'm not sure if he controls them, but they clearly wanted to kill us. What place was he talking about? "Where is it?" I asked. The only other vampire we've ever met as powerful as this one was a couple of years ago in Chicago. After that incident, our original 3rd team member resigned, and Pity took her place. Pat sort of modeled herself after Prudence, so from afar, it's not hard to see why this vampire might think they were the same person. I got up and made some calls. The sun began to rise. "You can use everything in this apartment," I said. "There is food and drinks in the refrigerator, and there's more than enough money here to get you back to your headquarters. The phones work too. The sun will rise in an hour. It's autumn now, so it will get dark quickly. Tomorrow night, as soon as the sun goes down, I'm heading to Chicago. Mason, you are alone. You will die. Wait while we contact headquarters. We'll sort it out. Mason, you are alone. You will die." Patience said, "Wait while we contact headquarters. We'll decide everything. You got us out of this mess. And although you're a man and a vampire, I think you're still not bad. I don't want you to die," she added. "Patience, I was dead long before you were born," I answered. "But without Pity in my life, I will be truly dead. Without her, I'll still die. I have no choice. Then pick me up when you go, she said. I nodded and returned to my real home. I was lost in thought, wondering how I had even gotten involved in this matter. At first, it seemed like such a routine divorce case, but now I began to question things I hadn't thought about for many years. I smiled, realizing that Chris was next to me as always, holding my hand. It spoke volumes about how close and comfortable we were with each other. I looked around the room and noticed that everywhere I looked, there was red hair. My Aunt Angela, whom I loved even though she sometimes scared me, was giving a lecture to Rebecca. Savannah stood nearby, absorbing everything her aunt was trying to teach her. Savannah and I always got along well. Unlike the others, she was more of a listener than a talker. She was also much more cunning than people thought. I wondered why Savannah was even here, and then I realized that she was here for one simple reason: her family. Savannah felt there was enough truth in this for her to take action and make sure her husband, Greg, and children were safe. Savannah always did only what she wanted, so in that regard, she was just like the rest of us. But she became decisive and purposeful only when it came to Greg. I remember the first time I received notice that my cousin was getting married. I didn't want to go south, but after hearing Angela's story about Savannah getting married, I knew I had to see it with my own eyes. I imagined she would live in some dilapidated house like the ones I saw when I visited her in the summer as a child. How surprised I was when it turned out that Savannah lived in a complex that included several houses and industrial enterprises. The main house was a beautiful old Annabella mansion, completely restored and modernized. When Chris, my husband, a huge football fan, saw Savannah's fiancé, he almost went crazy. "It's Greg Gates," he shouted. "Greg Gates at your wedding?" "Of course, he's here." Savannah grinned. I'd known her all my life and had never seen her like this. She literally glowed. "Do you want to meet him?" she asked. Chris, my usually calm husband, stood there nodding like one of those toy dogs on a dashboard. Savannah beckoned Greg with her finger, and he immediately apologized to the people he was talking to and headed toward us. The closer he got, the bigger he seemed. He was tall, powerful, with caramel skin that contrasted sharply with the pale skin of the little girl he carried in his arms. Despite his impressive appearance, he was very modest when Chris started bombarding him with questions about his football career. Greg politely answered every question. When Chris said, "You know, Savannah is my cousin," Greg nodded quietly. "Well, sort of like marriage, but that also counts, right?" Chris continued. "Of course," Greg answered softly. "So, how did Savannah convince you to come to her wedding?" Chris asked. "She's kind of marrying me," Greg answered with a quiet smile. Chris froze for a moment and then exploded with delight. Greg, clearly concerned about the safety of the child in his arms, instinctively turned around, shielding the girl from my husband, who probably looked a little crazy. I think Greg expected, as happens in the South, that Chris might not approve of a union between a white woman and a black man. "Oh, God!" Chris shouted to the whole hall. "Greg Gates is my cousin." He rushed around the hall, explaining this to everyone who would listen. "He's a nice guy," Greg said, laughing. "Fairy." I smiled a little, excitable, Savannah added. "Fairy." I smiled again, as I pushed the memory to the back of my mind. I noticed Evie sitting relaxed in the corner with her legs up. She was talking on the phone and listening to music at the same time. We had strict rules. Don't call anyone until this was all over. But it looked like Evie had already called her husband, Chance. Evie had always had problems with rules. Meanwhile, it was getting dark outside, but I knew we still had enough time with Rebecca. It usually started around midnight. I decided to rest a little when, suddenly, real chaos began. Rebecca suddenly stood up and walked toward the door. Angela tried to stop her, but then remembered what the plan was. I looked at Rebecca. The shy, introverted woman I knew was gone. Her face became like a mask, passive, devoid of any human emotions. And there was something else in my head, in the back of my mind. I began to hear a voice calling me. It was as if it wanted to take something from me that I was sure I didn't have. It was the same voice that had screamed to me last night, but this time it tried to seduce me. Angela pressed her hand to her head. I realized that the voice was talking to her too. A quick glance at my cousin showed that they, too, heard this voice. It was soft, soothing, almost mesmerizing. But then I felt Chris squeeze my hand, and I realized what I could lose if I gave in. I stopped listening to the voice and simply drowned it out in my mind. At that moment, I finally understood. The plan was not entirely clear to me. I thought Rebecca needed to find out as much as she could while whatever we were facing tried to take control of her, but this did not happen. Rebecca was clearly influenced by the voice that spoke to us all. I tried desperately not to give in to its offer. It felt like my mind was working in slow motion. The effort to say no took all my strength, and I didn't even have to say it out loud. It was enough to just think no. On the other hand, if I even thought for a moment yes, or maybe, everything that made me who I am would be lost forever. "Sarah, I love you," it sounded right in my head. I knew it was Chris, although I couldn't explain how I knew it. Chris had no supernatural abilities other than his fighting skills. He was out of his element here, but he had just saved me. Suddenly, anger flared in my brain. Hell no, get out of my head, I thought with all my might. I focused my thoughts on Chris and Char, thinking about how he would probably throw a wild celebration for her first birthday in 6 months. I told him that she wouldn't remember anything, but he kept talking about photos and videos, so I knew I hadn't convinced him. There is no way I will allow this entity to take me away from them. Then another voice sounded in my head. I did it. Aunt Angela said it suddenly. My eyes opened again, and I saw Rebecca almost reaching the door. Chris, using his amazing speed, crossed the room in an instant and positioned himself between her and the door. Chris gently slapped her cheek, and her eyes began to focus. As soon as Rebecca came to her senses, there was some kind of explosion. It was like a bright light flashed in my brain. Get out of my head! It was Rebecca, and she radiated so much raw psychic energy that I was surprised Chris didn't feel it. Then, another explosion occurred. This one was physical. Everything happened much faster than I had ever seen, as if a strange implosion had occurred. All the windows in the room shattered inward, throwing shards of razor-sharp glass in our direction. Angela grabbed Rebecca's shoulder. Somehow, my aunt was able to tap into Rebecca's abilities and redirect each sharp, deadly shard toward one of the walls. When I looked at the wall, I really saw it. I saw what we were fighting. It was a woman. She wasn't exactly beautiful, but not ugly either. She was dressed like one of those early settlers, wearing a long, layered dress and a formal hairstyle of the time. I suppose, in the manner of her era, she could be considered attractive. Her face, on the other hand, was both angry and smiling. She smiled like a wolf playing with its prey, and then she threw back her head and laughed. "Well, that was fun," she said, still giggling. "Looks like I want to be able to do this the easy way." I looked around, and everyone in the room, including Chris, clearly saw the woman. She was not made of flesh. It was almost like fog, but completely distinct. "You little witch," she said, pointing at Rebecca. "You have a choice to make. If you ever want to see your companion again, you will meet me on the night of the solstice. You can even bring your friends if you want. They clearly pose no threat to me, and they seem to give you courage. Besides, when we're done with you, I'll love to watch you kill them." Nobody said a word. We just looked at her, shocked. "Maybe you'll keep this one to serve me," she spat, pointing at Chris. "But for now, you all seem stunned. Let me do something to light the fire in you." As her misty form disappeared, small lights lit up throughout the office. At the same time, all the lights throughout the building went out. What was even stranger was that the electronic locks on all the doors slammed shut. I tried to swipe my card, but there was no electricity. Yai began to panic. "She's trying to burn us alive," she said. Savannah calmly walked to one of the broken windows and looked out. Smoke began to fill the room. This shouldn't have happened either. The wind from the broken windows should have dispersed the smoke, but the wind did not seem to penetrate the building. "It'll take the fire," said my Aunt Angela. She grabbed Rebecca's hand again and closed her eyes. The cool rain extinguished the fire. "It'll open the door," Chris said. My husband was a real bore sometimes. He grabbed my shoulder the same way Angela grabbed Rebecca. He then jumped into the air while performing a sidekick. His outstretched leg struck the door, knocking it open and freeing us. "It wasn't magic that got us out of here," Evie spat. "It's magic," Savannah said to me. We walked out of the building, and as I looked at my office from the outside, I was glad we had good insurance. It was strange that no one outside the office had heard anything. I headed to the gatehouse and told the building security chief to call the insurance company and get an agent to assess the damage to my office. I needed new floors, some paint, and new furniture, but things could have been much worse. When I returned to the parking lot, I noticed that everyone looked like they'd been through a war. Everyone looked depressed and exhausted. Savannah was silent as usual, and even Evie didn't say a word. Aunt Angela was still smiling, trying to support Rebecca. Chris was gathering everyone into my SUV. There are 6 of us, so we can all fit. Then I noticed Chris heading to his car. I should have known that even in this situation, Chris wouldn't be able to leave his Mustang. "Evie!" I shouted. "You're a truck driver? Or rather, your husband drives my truck. Just follow us." "Well, for goodness sake, Sarah," she chuckled. "Let the man breathe." But within seconds, Evie climbed into the driver's seat and followed us out of the parking lot. I leaned back into the GT 500's thick leather upholstery and closed my eyes. I was completely exhausted. I reached out for my husband's hand and thanked my luck that he was there. "Chris," I mumbled, as exhaustion took over and I fell asleep. "I love you too, Sarah," he said. I woke up in the dark. My hands were tied behind my back, and everything hurt. I remembered this man, this creature, that hit me in the face several times. I had never been hit so hard in my life, although I'd been through many fights. What irritated me most was how easily he dealt with me. At first, he started following me. I noticed he was following me earlier. He didn't even try to hide. I stopped as I left the factory. I needed to call Sarah and find out how her surveillance of my unfaithful wife went. I decided that if I just stopped, this guy would pass by, so I made the call. This man had the nerve to just come up and push me while I was talking. Then he pushed me again. "I'll call you back," I told Sarah. I charged at the guy. "Well, let's be honest, I'm only 1.75 meters tall, but I weigh 95 kilograms, most of it muscle, although there's some wiry fat too. But this guy, he was old. He must have been 50 or 60 years old. He was my height, but I clearly outweighed him by 50 pounds. So when I hit him in the jaw, I expected him to pass out. But his head barely moved. He didn't do any karate moves or anything like that. He just stood there and smiled. "Are you finished?" he asked. I didn't answer. I was too shocked that my punch didn't hurt him. The next thing I remember is waking up, all thoughts racing feverishly through my head. The guy looked like some old. Maybe he was one of the people my wife slept with. Maybe she found out what was going on and sent him after me to make sure I didn't file for divorce. Obviously, she didn't understand how hard it was for me. I loved her more than I could express in words. I didn't want to offend her. I wanted to give her the freedom to date all the old alcoholic men she wanted. I just didn't want to be married to her while she was doing this. Even now, tied up in some dark pit, I still loved her. It will take me a long time, if ever, to forget her. Somewhere in the darkness, I heard a faint groan. "Who's there?" I asked. I heard a faint sound again. It seemed that every breath was given to this person with pain. I heard several short, sharp breaths, but there was no answer to my question. "My name is Joey Logano," I said. "My hands are tied. I am here against my will. Are you a prisoner too?" "I am Sister Piatti," came the answer. Then I heard her take another clearly painful breath. "Did you say sister? What do you mean? You're a nun?" I asked. "Yes," she said, sighing again. "But I'm not the nun you're used to. So you're one of those modern nuns who wears suits, writes books, and appears on television." "Huh?" I asked. She laughed, although I realized that the laughter hurt her. Her mood improved noticeably. "I'm rather the opposite," she laughed. "I do wear a suit, but it's not the kind of suit you imagine. Nuns don't wear it, and they don't write books about us. We certainly don't appear on television." Even as she spoke, her pride in her work shone through, and her voice became stronger. "Don't worry, sister. Before I was kidnapped, I managed to send a message to one of my friends. She's the best private detective. She'll find us," I said. "Joey, as soon as my sisters can, they'll come for me. I think they'll find us before your detective does. We're professionals at this. We have a whole support team. In fact, I'm surprised none of us has been saved yet," she said. We sat and talked, drawing strength from each other. Our conversation became a defense against fear and darkness. However, all the while, I felt that she was hiding something from me. Later, I was glad she didn't tell me everything. I wasn't at all prepared to learn such things. Mason, as soon as the sun began to set, I got up and walked. The last rays of the sun were very unpleasant, but I had no choice. I put on dark glasses, generously applied sunscreen, and donned a dark hood before heading to the apartment where Patience and Repentance were waiting for me. Patience was already on her feet, though she stood unsteadily. She looked alarmed to see me. She quickly grabbed me and pulled me into the room. Even Repentance was surprised to see my exposed skin, smoking and turning black. "Mason, you're a fool. Death won't bring us closer to it any faster," she said. "I can't just lie there while she—" "I understand," I started. "We feel the same way," Patience said, "but we need to get to her in one piece. And when we get there, we'll have to come up with a plan," Repentance added. "And we'll have to do something terrible," said Patience. Repentance looked at her and lowered her head. "What?" I asked. "There's nothing I won't do for her. I'm willing to die for her," I said. Even Repentance was touched by my words. "It's a pity it's not so simple, Mason," said Patience. "It's easy to take this on because it's what we do. It's harder to convince another person to go along with it. It's especially difficult if that person is a friend. She's already done her part and left this business. She has a home and a family. She has a child. She doesn't need this life anymore. You're talking about that Prudence the stupid who kidnapped Patty was talking about, right?" I asked. They both nodded. "We'll figure it out along the way," I said, feeling disgusted. We went to the airport and soon used my friend's plane again. We had all night to fly to Chicago. I knew it wouldn't take that long, but I needed to find a place to hide for the day in a city I'd only seen a couple of times. I didn't have any shelters in Chicago, and I needed to make sure I didn't die in daylight. I trusted Patience, and to a lesser extent Repentance, but I never took my safety for granted. After all, they worked for the church. "Sarah," I woke up in the dark. I was lying on a comfortable sofa with a warm blanket thrown over me. Despite the darkness, I felt Chris's presence nearby. My eyes opened, and I saw his silhouette against the background of the window, looking out. "I miss her," he said. Somehow, even in the darkness, Chris sensed the moment when I opened my eyes. "I know, honey." "Me too," I said. "Everyone is asleep. That battle, or whatever it was, left you all exhausted. Both bedrooms upstairs are occupied. Aunt Angela and Rebecca are in one. Evie and Savannah are in the other. Evie is amazing. She drove the car all the way here like a pro. She kept driving even after that. Like everyone else, she fell asleep as soon as we arrived. I had to carry her upstairs. She talks a lot, but her heart is in the right place." "Where are we?" I asked. "I somehow slept through your entire escape plan. We're at Will Temple's cabin. Remember when we hid here during that weird thing with the clones?" He said. "I can't believe we thought it was a weird thing at the time," I said. He sighed, and I could imagine him shrugging. "So let me get this straight," I joked. "There are 2 huge beds upstairs, and it looks like the love of your life hasn't earned a place in either of them. So, someone must have been watching you, lady, while you were sleeping," he said. "Well, that explains you, but what about me?" I asked. "I didn't want you to be away from me," he said softly. Then he turned sharply toward the stairs as if he had heard something. "God, this is so scary," my Aunt Angela smiled. "How the hell did he know I was here?" "Come on, Chris," she said. "Tell my niece you love her for the 200th time today. She loves hearing it. And then when you told her that, it got her out of that mess we were in." "I love you, Sarah," he said, and as always, it made me feel like I might explode with happiness. "We will survive all this strangeness. We've always survived, and one day, we'll have incredible stories to tell our grandchildren." Angela gave us a few minutes, and then gathered the others. "Her name is Bridget Bishop," Angela said. "I Googled her. She was one of the first people to die in the Salem witch trials. She's very angry and wants revenge." "How the hell do we fit in here?" Evie asked. "Something is driving her," Angela said. "She believes that by taking the power of 100 witches, she will become so powerful that she can gain a new body and take revenge on both the souls and descendants of the people who hanged her." "Can I repeat my damn question, or are you going to answer it?" Evie asked. "Rebecca may be the most powerful witch on the planet right now," Angela said. "Bridget wants her body. Like Sarah said, These night attacks were just Bridget testing out what it would be like to take control of Rebecca's body. You can answer my question anytime. And Angela, Evie said, we're here because Bridget needs to gather the power of 100 witches, and the 3 of us were on her list. Since she couldn't get us, she got angry and now wants us too. She's like a pit bull that grabbed a bone. But I know how she stops. There is a necklace called the Amulet of Saint CLA. It is supposed to protect the wearer from any possessions. It's usually used against demons, but I think it will work against a dead witch. If we get it, not only can we prevent Rebecca's body from being taken over, but we can also trap Bridget inside it. Now that sounds like a damn plan, Evie said. Where is it? This is where Sarah and Chris come in, Angela said. After all, she's the best in her business. Is she even doing anything? Evie asked. I didn't know that running around and shouting "Where's Chris?" was considered an achievement, I said. Shut up, I shouted, and we looked at each other with a smile. Go get him, cousin, she smiled. I headed to the spare room that Will was using as an office. I started looking for information. The World Wide Web is an amazing thing. You can find information about anything on the internet. An hour later, I already knew the history of the amulet and how it was created. Then I had to trace its path through the years. Around 1 o'clock in the morning, I heard whispers outside the door. She's been there for several hours, a woman's voice said. Just let her work, Chris whispered. He quietly entered the room, left a cup of hot cocoa on the table next to me, and kissed me. 2 hours later, I left the room with a smile on my face. For the last 30 years, the amulet had been in the possession of a witch named Margot Sardos. She lived in New Orleans. She became rich as a fortune teller and owned a chain of fortune-telling salons. Everyone thought it was just nonsense. Nobody knew she was a real witch. She sold the amulet to a woman named A. Duets last year on Halloween. Chris, honey, you and I are heading to New Orleans. We're going to ask the witch where this amulet is now, right? He asked. No, honey, I said. Duets and her husband Wayne Duets live in the Chicago suburbs. It's only about an hour away from us. Then why are we going to New Orleans? Evie asked. Because after they used the amulet, they gave it back to Margot, I said. We need to hurry to get back as soon as possible. Angela can protect you until we return, but we need to get the amulet to protect Rebecca until that which comes back even stronger. We barely fought her off tonight. If she finds any more witches, she will become stronger. This is the end for us. Less than 10 minutes later, Chris and I were on our way to the airport. We were trying to get on a flight to New Orleans that was leaving around 9 in the morning. With all the new security procedures, we needed to get there quickly. Along the way, Chris had a good idea. He reminded me of those small private charter planes that fly on schedule when they are available. We might be able to find one cheaper than flying on a commercial plane at the last minute. I opened my laptop and found a man who was flying from New Orleans to Chicago. If we're lucky, we'll be able to fly back with him, I said. When we got to the airport, this man had already landed and was refueling his plane for the return flight. We thought he would want to rest for a few hours, but he was refueling his plane. We had to wait until his passengers got off before we could talk to him about the ride back. His passengers were strange. One of them, a man, looked like a typical hardened Cajun. He was about 28, with 3 days of stubble adorning his face. He seemed very pale and incredibly tense. There was nothing special about this man. Perhaps it was my many years of investigative instincts, but I felt something strange about him. Despite his appearance, the 2 women who were with him, on the contrary, seriously scared me. Both were dressed from head to toe in black leather, and it was clear that these clothes had seen better days. One of them was older, with a learned look. She was beautiful and could have been any age from 40 to 60. The other was the largest woman I had ever seen in my life. She looked like an Amazon come to life, and twice as fierce. And, of course, she was red-haired. I was glad that we didn't take any of the others with us. The giant, red-haired woman looked us over, and I swore something flashed between us. Then she quickly turned away and began to talk to her 2 strange companions. I would really like to investigate and learn more about them if I had more time. I swear, in the 2 minutes we were with them, I heard her mention killing something or someone at least 20 times. One of those times, I think she was talking about us. Mason, traveling with Patience and Penance, was an experience. Patience, other than her clothing, didn't attract any attention or cause any problems. Penance, on the contrary, was a real thorn. I became more and more convinced that penance was the element itself. Her suspicion of everything and dark personality forced us to constantly stop her from staring or confronting those around her. Added to this was the fact that despite her size, Penance was beautiful, and this created problems. Men stared at her, and some women too. When she caught their gaze, she immediately suspected that they were plotting something against us. Other times, she thought they were working for the vampire we were running from, but also searching for this. This led to Penance whispering that she was going to kill everyone who passed by. Penance suspected everyone. Men, women, children, and even pets were all on her list. I had to pull her away from a deaf woman whose guide dog briefly met her gaze. This led to her lecture that if I ever touched her again, she would find a way to resurrect me so she could kill me again. As we left the airport, she stared at a couple. She swore there was something off about them. The man was thin and blonde. He looked like a slightly aged surfer. Perhaps he should have shaved, but the same could be said about me. When I looked at him more closely, I realized that there really was something unusual about him. He looked at us as if he was wondering how he would deal with us if necessary. "Dude, you have no idea," I chuckled. The woman next to him was amazing. She had long, light red hair that almost had a life of its own. She was tall and slender with interesting curves. Her little square glasses on her nose made her look like the prettiest librarian in the world. She also carefully observed everything around her. If we had more time, it would be interesting to know what they did, but time was not on our side for several reasons. First, I needed to find a meeting place with that vampire. Secondly, I needed to convince an old friend of Patience and Penance to help us save Pity, although we all felt guilty that we were going to drag her back into this story. So, we left the airport without making contact with anyone. I used my phone to find 2 hotels near the airport, rented a car, and dropped the women off at one hotel without telling them where I was staying. Before leaving, Patience said that they would get some sleep, then check out the meeting place and contact their old friend. We would visit her the next evening. When I woke up, I checked into a hotel that was less touristy and more secluded. Shortly after sunrise, I put up the Do Not Disturb sign and pulled the curtains as tightly as possible. Then I took out my suitcase and pulled out a long plastic bag, which was lined inside with a dark material that didn't allow light to pass through. I placed the bag under the bed and zipped it shut, trapping myself inside. It was a risky place to sleep, but I was willing to take any risk for Pity. The next evening, I woke up. It wouldn't have surprised me if I hadn't woken up at all, but since I did, I had things to do. I called Patience and said I would be at their hotel in 20 minutes. They hadn't sat idle. They had already visited the site of a battle with another vampire that had taken place 2 years ago. They also contacted their base and reported everything that happened. Obviously, the superiors wanted to get them out of there and send someone else. They constantly talked about some mysterious she, and perhaps even him. When I pressed for information about who this she was, they were evasive and categorically refused to discuss him. So, even though their superiors thought it was better for them to stay put until help arrived, and time was running out, we were left to our own devices. Patience knew the address of their ex-girlfriend, but decided not to contact her. "Mason, you have to understand," she said. "We love Pity, but we love Prudence just as much. It doesn't seem smart to risk losing both of them. Prudence has earned the right to a good life. And in the end, the church wasn't fair to her. When they thought she was infected, they just turned away from her and found a replacement. So we start working with Pity," I said. "We'll figure it out. We'll save her, or we'll die trying." Penance interjected, "We just have to be smart and analyze all the possibilities. We have to outwit this vampire and kill everyone who gets in our way. This vampire is obviously very old and very smart," I said. "He probably honed his strategies and battle plans over hundreds of years. And you're just a master at bringing pessimism," Penance grumbled. "Let's look around the place where this meeting is going to take place," I said. "Perhaps we can use the area against him, or perhaps he has someone watching the area to see when we show up." We drove there, and surprisingly, it was not a deserted open space like the one where we had encountered the other vampire a few months ago. It was a place filled with bars and restaurants. Their battles took place in the alley behind the bar, so with the noise from the parties and the fun in the bars, no one paid attention to the sounds of battle not far away. About 50 meters away, there was a small clearing that led to a park with a wooded area and a small hill. I'd prefer our next battle to take place there rather than in the alley. Looking around the area, I felt something was wrong. I spotted them in the dark behind a row of bars, two who shouldn't have been together. One of them was clearly a vampire. He was strong enough but still young. His companion was definitely not human. He had the same smell that I'd noticed from the werewolves in Texas. We stayed in the shadows to watch them. We had an idea. We could take patients on a walk through the area to see how they would react. Perhaps one of them would follow her, or maybe they'd come back to say we'd already arrived. We were on the verge of putting our plan into action when they appeared out of nowhere. Obviously, Papa Chalu was not only inspecting the area, but was also ready for our appearance. Suddenly, 3 more werewolves and 1 older vampire appeared behind us. They surrounded us. There were more of them, and they were stronger. One of the vampires, a bald man who looked like some kind of goth or skinhead, came right up to us. "Idiots," he said. "You came early and empty-handed. There's no point in continuing." You didn't follow his instructions at all. "Dad doesn't like it when rules are broken. Looks like you're about to get a good beating. We might have to take another one of your nuns to show you that we're serious." We had neither equipment nor weapons. I didn't need it, of course, but we hadn't planned on fighting. This was supposed to be just reconnaissance, but everything had changed. She jumped from one of the nearby rooftops, dressed from head to toe in red leather. Her skin was different from the costumes worn by patients and penance, but not that much. Perhaps it was more modern, with Kevlar inserts in strategic places. Her clothes were both tighter and more flexible. She landed almost silently, taking a 3-point stance, then stood up and met the vampire's gaze. Both patients and penance gasped at the same time. "Sister, I'm not a nun anymore," she said with a smile. When I looked at her, I was stunned. The woman literally glowed. Her long golden hair sparkled with every hit of light. She stood there with a confidence that even I didn't have. "This is the one Papa wanted," the vampire remarked contemptuously. "Hey guys," she grinned. "You probably shouldn't reach out to me." "Why not?" the vampire grinned. "All those phone ads say it's worth reaching out and touching someone. Besides, your friends here are beaten and scared. The werewolves can smell their fear. You'll be fighting alone." The vampire took a few steps toward her. He stared at her, trying to hypnotize her. It was a really stupid mistake. "He's dead," Penance muttered, as if she had cast a curse. The vampire died with a cry of pain. Everything happened so quickly that even I could barely track it. Some kind of incendiary dart shot out of nowhere, hitting the vampire, after which he burst into flames. "Prudence is never alone," Penance chuckled. The other vampires and werewolves were clearly worried. The 3 werewolves looked at each other and took a step back. Even Patience and Penance were impressive. 1, 2, 3, 4, Prudence said calmly, as if reading a nursery rhyme. Another dead werewolf hit the floor. "Her husband," she added, finishing the rhyme. "I know it's your favorite, darling," she said, "but you can clean it up when we get home." That was all that was needed. Regardless of whether her statement was bravado or truth, the effect was the same. The werewolves and the vampire began to run. Once the numbers were equal, they didn't want to participate in the battle. As for me, I understood them. Vampires and werewolves can live, or at least exist, for incredibly long periods of time. Boredom and stupidity usually kill us. We just get tired of the pain of existing while everything and everyone we knew disappears. Or we make a colossally stupid mistake like getting caught in the sun. The idea of dying from violence is usually not part of our calculations. We are too strong, too cunning, and if defeated, too fast to be killed. Even when seriously injured, we can escape, heal, and plan revenge. And if this is not possible, we can simply hide and wait out our enemies. It was a shock to see how easily 2 wolves were destroyed by 2 people who didn't even have holy enhancements like patience and penance. Prudence was incredible. Even without her powers, it was clear that pity, no matter how much I loved her, was a weak imitation of prudence. Another thing that caught my eye was that Pity was about 70 centimeters taller than the average woman. That's tall, but Prudence was almost 6 feet tall and had the aura of a literal goddess. She was so beautiful that it was almost painful to look at her. Her husband, Jason, was another mystery. It would be easy to understand if Prudence somehow retained some of the power that was called grace in the order of the Sisters of Fate. After all, it was believed to come from heavenly sources. But how do you explain a man who fought as well as she did? I didn't have any answers. At the same time, I was glad that we could try to enlist their help in saving Pity, but I was also worried that, unlike Patience and Penance, they might not be so lenient toward my presence. Prudence turned to us and smiled. It was amazing. Her beauty was doubled just by simply widening her lips and showing her teeth. Patience, you're bad at your job, she chuckled, pointing at Penance. Doesn't the commandment that you should not covet someone else's things apply to Penance? His constant desire to take possession of my husband's toys. Patience was silent for a moment. I cannot condemn our sister for the sins that I myself have committed, she said quietly. Jason, can I keep this bow and arrow? It's not a sin. Penance grumbled. Jason isn't a neighbor. He's like family, Prudence said, sheathing her sword, ignoring her husband's annoyed sigh that she had put it away. Her golden eyes turned to me. You must be Mason, she said with a smile. You can come to us. Pet has written to me about you several times. Please, her husband said. Your presence will help relieve some of the accumulated testosterone. I liked him immediately. If the situation weren't so serious, we could have had a nice time. But my thoughts were on Pity, not on pleasant family gatherings. Prudence, we're not here for social calls, I said quietly. They took Pity. The leader of these creatures is a very ancient and very powerful vampire. He wants revenge on you for killing one of his descendants some time ago. Pity is his trump card. We have no other choice. However, I feel uncomfortable, so I ask you for help. I will give you everything you want. I fell silent and looked at her. I know people associated with the church don't really like my kind. I continued. When this is all over and she's safe, you can kill me. Just help us save her. Everyone fell silent and stared at me. Even Penance was speechless. Jason coughed, then burst out laughing. He patted me on the back and continued laughing. Damn it, sorry, he said. I swear I'm working on not swearing, but I think we've lost our third again. We change third members like Spinal Tap changes their drummers. Damn. Don't pay any attention to them, Mason, said Prudence. They just don't understand true love and the sacrifices we make for it. Even as she said this, her hand reached out and found Jason's. It reminded me so much of Pity, who always held my cold, dead hand when we were together. Of course we will help, she smiled. That's what families do. Who doesn't understand true love? Penance muttered. I had the most beautiful antique warhammer. It was true love until he broke it. Penance, I didn't break your hammer, I said. I just grabbed it and threw it. Did you break her hammer too? Jason asked. Now I understand there's something about you that I like, he said, but I started. How many hammers does she even need? I heard she has about 50 of them, Jason said. I need thousands. Penance grumbled, too quietly to be called into the conversation, but we all heard her. The flight to New Orleans was much more difficult than any of my previous flights. Perhaps this was due to the fact that I had never flown on small private jets, or maybe it was because the pilot clearly liked to multitask while flying. Several times I caught him flying, chatting, and trying to sneak a peek at my legs at the same time. If it weren't for our urgency, I think I would have waited for the commercial flight. The next one we could catch was leaving O'Hare Airport at 9 o'clock in the morning. The flight time on a regular plane from Chicago to New Orleans is just under 2 hours, but this small plane did not have that speed. The pilot estimated that the flight would take about 2 hours and 40 minutes, so we would be in the air for about an hour longer. But considering that we would be in New Orleans before the commercial flight even left Chicago, our choice was clear. When we landed, we rented a car and used Google again to find a fortune teller. I knew she had 4 or 5 establishments. I call them that because some of them were full-fledged stores and others were just counters inside other businesses. We didn't know which one she would be in, so we chose the one that was closest to the airport and plotted a route there. The store looked exactly as you'd expect. A small building with a storefront on the street, surrounded by voodoo shops and small restaurants. The very nice older lady who worked there looked at us with interest as soon as we walked in. "We're not open yet, but I left the door open for you," she said. "We need to start," but she interrupted me. "You need to know your destiny, Sarah," she smiled. "It's $50, and it'll open the veil of the future for you. Tell you everything you need to know where you're going and what's going to happen when you get there." The sign outside says $30. Chris smiled, already reaching for the money. "These are just ordinary predictions," she smiled in response. "Yours is a very special prediction, so it's worth a little more." Chris, I think the fact that she knew our names made us curious. Even when Chris handed her the money, she winked at us. "When this is all over, you two should really come back, so I can tell you about your adorable daughter and what she'll do in the future," she said. She handed us a note and waved goodbye. She then continued walking around the store, watering the plants, and put the kettle on the stove. Chris just looked at me and shrugged. I opened the note and read it. She was clearly the woman we were looking for. The note said which of her stores she would be waiting for us at. She knew we would come and had begun cleaning the amulet last night so that it would be ready for our arrival. I turned to the elderly woman. She looked up, and before I could say anything, she added, "You're welcome. Good luck." I thought the note said we would get an amulet. I told her, "Sarah, you will receive the amulet." She smiled. "It's in the best interest of all of us if Bridget gains any power, or if the entity that controls her gets the opportunity to infiltrate our plane. It will be the end for all of us." I looked at her with confusion. "Sarah, you're going to have to try harder," she said. "You're missing pieces of the puzzle all over the place. It's your gift. You know, in your own way, you're as powerful as anyone else, but your abilities come in a different form." "My what?" I asked, smiling, thinking she was crazy. "Sarah, how can you not believe after everything you've seen?" she asked. "I believe in her abilities," Chris said. "Of course you do," she said. "Sorry, Chris, it's called love. If Sarah told you she could fly, you'd probably jump off the top of a building." "Sarah, why do you think you don't have powers?" she asked. "Well, first of all, I can't do any of the things that my aunt can do. I can't do the things that I saw Rebecca do," I said. "Even Savannah and Evie have more abilities than me, and they can't do much at all. Your cousin Savannah has the ability to control or alter probabilities," she said. "She can't control it. If you look at her life, she rarely has big failures. Even the one traumatic experience she went through ultimately led her to happiness. Evie controls the moods of the people around her. Unfortunately, she usually limits herself to things that piss everyone off," she continued. "But you, Sarah, are like me. We are clairvoyants. We can't even lift a match with our powers. It makes you think that you don't have them, but we can see everything. We see patterns and trends. We see actions as pieces of a puzzle, and if properly developed, we can see the future. This makes all these bright abilities not so necessary." I looked at her, trying to at least show that I was open to her ideas. "What makes you think you're so good at your investigations?" "Your Aunt Angela has been trying to explain this to you for years," she said. "And who is my Aunt Angela?" I asked. "Your Aunt Angela can do everything. She's a sorceress. She's at the top of the chain. If she had more powers, she could be the most powerful witch on the planet. That would be good because she's incredibly kind. If Bridget wins, or if the entity that controls her is the end of all of us, especially everyone with even the slightest magical abilities." Bridget began to crave more and more power. She will not stop at 100 witches. First, she will want to return her lands and take revenge on those who executed her unfairly. But after she gets it, she will want more. She needs to be stopped. Rebecca is just a battery, nothing more. She doesn't know how to control herself. She always hid her abilities and hid from them. She doesn't want anything to do with it. And what's worse, she's weak. She's like a nuclear reactor with a bad cooling system. Sooner or later, she will explode. I have already foreseen several possible scenarios in which you will lose. Sarah, you're also wasting time. Your visit here to me is a waste of time, but not a fatal one. We wanted to talk, so I could make you start believing in yourself. What do you mean waste of time? I asked. Your allies could bring you a necklace, she said. They still had to go to Chicago for their fight, and they're the key to stopping Bridget. I can't tell you more, but I will tell you this. Angela will play a big role in this, as will Rebecca. But Angela's plan will fail, and you don't use it. She picked up the box with the amulet. Just as you think, what allies? I asked. Suddenly, a picture of an airport appeared in my mind. A pale, cinched man and two strange women in leather suits. Exactly, she said. Sarah, working with them will take you out of your comfort zone, as will your other allies. But they will all play their roles, and without them, you can't win. It seems like you have enough of my money now, she smiled. Tell my pilot your ride back to Chicago is free. On the way to the airport, I squeezed my husband's hand so tightly that he probably thought I was trying to break it, but I was lost in my thoughts. I had to find the flaw in Angela's plan, or we would all die. I also needed to understand what the gypsy meant when she said Rebecca was weak. She compared it to a nuclear reactor. I guess that meant it could explode and kill us all, or cause us to die. I also needed to figure out how queer people were involved in all of this. The gypsy said that we have other allies. Less than an hour later, we were back at the airport and flying home, with the pilot swearing under his breath the entire flight. He was ready to demand we pay for the return flight until I explained to him that the gypsy was allowing us to fly for free. He spent most of the flight complaining that the Yankees were depriving his children of food. I think that the very second the plane touched down, Chris jumped to his feet and pulled me along the narrow passage of the plane toward the exit. I was proud of his determination and willingness to throw himself into danger for the greater good. I was even more glad that he was there because he gave me strength. These thoughts swirled around in my head until I noticed him dragging me toward the parking lot and his beloved Mustang. As soon as we got to the car, he walked around it to make sure it hadn't been scratched in the 8 hours what had been gone. When we got into the car, he shocked me even more by calling home to check on Charera. Give her the phone, he told my assistant, who probably thought Chris was crazy. Chris, dear, she is only 6 months old. Not only will she not understand what is happening, but she will never remember it, I said. He just shrugged and started the car. He squeezed my hand, and we headed back to our house. For the most part, the road was calm, but there was one incident that made my brain work on all cylinders. We were driving on the freeway, and, as usual, when Chris thought we weren't going to get caught, he was speeding. We were traveling at about 110 miles per hour. I was lost in my thoughts, trying to make sense of everything, and Chris was focused on driving. Suddenly, I felt him tense next to me. What happened, dear? I asked. Nothing, he answered kindly, but from the expression on his face, I realized that something was happening. I glanced at the speedometer. Chris was going 140 miles per hour. The supercharger whistle was clearly audible, and the Shelby engine roared at full power. I knew the car could do another 40 miles per hour. I looked in the rearview mirror to see what was going on and noticed a car coming toward us very quickly. We lost a little traction as we turned the corner, but I knew Chris could handle the car at 160 miles per hour. This doesn't make sense, Chris spat. What doesn't make sense, dear? I asked. The car behind us is a 2006 or 2008 Mustang GT, and this guy has no chance of catching us at this speed, he said. I looked in the mirror again and saw that the car had not only caught up with us, but was also about to overtake us. Chris changed gear and pressed the gas pedal to the floor. He squeezed everything he could out of the big, turbocharged V8. We pushed it to the limit, and the car accelerated to over 170 miles per hour. 500 horsepower, and who knows how much torque carried us forward. The exhaust system was so loud it hurt my ears, but the bright yellow Mustang flew past us as if we were standing still. The strangest thing about it was that the car was silent as the grave. We hit a few sharp turns, and it didn't matter. Chris, no matter how good a driver he was, had to change gears and even hit the brakes to cope with the turns. This yellow Mustang continued to move forward at an absurd speed. Alarm bells started ringing in my head again. Sarah, did you see this? Asked Chris. He must have been traveling at over 200 miles per hour and maintained that speed through the turns. When the road straightened out again, the car became a dot on the highway, getting smaller every second. I didn't say anything to Chris, but I was sure that we would see this car again. We returned to the lodge early in the day. The first thing I did was show the amulet to Angela. Zara, ingratulabek. Everything is falling apart. Rebecca wants to make a deal, and Evie agrees with her. I think Evie just misses the chance, and with Savannah, it's generally not clear what's happening, she said. As soon as everyone heard me come in, they came out of their rooms. Rebecca, do you love Joey? I asked. She nodded her head vigorously. That's why I want to make a deal, she said. Bridget can just give me Joey back and promise to leave us alone, and then she can take my power. I don't need it anyway, and I don't know how to use it. It's not that kind of party, honey, I said. If you give her your power, she can take over everything. Why would she honor any deal she made? So if you give her what she wants, you will die, I will die, and Joey will die. You should think about this. I have an amulet, so we can protect you from her, but we still need to find a way to defeat her. The amulet will only protect one person. She nodded her head. Evie, I said, call Chance, talk to him about trucks, curse him, call him a bunch of names, then tell him you love him and get your head back in the game. We need you. Cousin Evie ran to call Chance. They'll call Greg, Savannah said, smiling. Great job, said Aunt Angela. Maybe we can still win. A few hours later, when everyone had relaxed, she appeared. As soon as it got dark, an even darker darkness enveloped the house. The lights suddenly went out and flickered again. I didn't come to fight, she said, appearing out of nowhere. Her form was more solid, but still ghostly. She hovered over Rebecca and spoke to her. No matter what we say or do, it all comes down to you, she said. Tomorrow night at this time, you will either give me your body, or I will slowly roast your husband. Whether he lives or dies is up to you. I don't have time to sit here and argue with you tonight. My powers will bring me a second body into which I will move if I cannot take yours. Wait, Rebecca said. I have a counteroffer. I never wanted this. If you let Joey go and leave us all alone, it'll give you my power. You can use it with the body you receive tonight, and everyone will be happy. I looked at Rebecca like she was crazy. They'll consider your offer, Bridget said, and then she disappeared. Are you crazy? I asked Rebecca. From the very beginning, this witch wanted your power. Why do you just want to give it to her? What will she do with it? I bet it's not good. What will happen to us? What will happen to the rest if she gets what she wants? She'll have no reason to honor any deals. If you give her your power, she will kill you, Joey, and everyone else. Sarah, I don't know what to do, she said. I just want this to end. I want to go back to just being Joey's wife. I'm not a witch, and I don't want to be one. I just want my husband back and our quiet life. She was on the verge of tears. The last 2 nights have been terrible. I can't sleep without Joey. This is some kind of nightmare, she said. But Rebecca, with great power comes great responsibility, I said. Sarah, I saw the Spider-Man movie too, she chuckled. Do you know why my powers never developed? Because I've never tried to use them. I hid what I could do. If we're talking about movies, how about Carrie? I always saw myself as that weird girl who had no friends. I can imagine my whole school lining up and shouting, they're all going to laugh at you. It was my worst nightmare, she said. And then I met Joey. Sarah, he is my everything. He loves me for who I am. Sarah, do you know how lucky I am to have a man who thinks I'm cutie in my old robe and curlers in my hair? I want this back. So for me, giving up power I never wanted is not a sacrifice. In fact, my life will only be better without her. Without power, there is no responsibility. I promise I'll get you and Joey back from all of this, I said. You just need to have a little faith. Okay, I'll try, Sarah said. I just miss him so much. I went outside, where my husband was digging under the hood of his car. I knew that he was checking everything to understand why that car overtook us and flew ahead. I knew it hurt his pride. Getting past was bad enough. But the worst part was that we were passed by another Mustang, and it was a cheaper model. If a Ferrari or a Lamborghini had overtaken us, that would have been one thing. Those cars cost 10 or 20 times more than his. But when your Mustang's doors are ripped off by another Mustang, it's like a blow to your dignity. Next time I see that car, they'll be ready, Chris said. At this moment, I completely blacked out. Everything came together in my head. I saw all of Bridget's plans, and everything became clear. I knew exactly what needed to be done to defeat her. There was only one piece left that I was missing, and I knew where to find it. I kissed Chris like the world was going to end. What is this for? He laughed. Honey, you just saved us all, I said. I ran into the house to find Aunt Angela and Rebecca. Annie, I need to know where Bridget is keeping Joey, I said. I don't know that, she replied. But if you go back to when you connected to her mind while she was trying to get into Rebecca's head, you can find out. Sarah, I don't have that kind of power, she said. But if you use Rebecca as a source of energy again, you can, I said. He'll try if she agrees, Aunt Angela said. I would do anything to get my Joey back, Rebecca said. A few minutes later, the three of us were sitting at the table. Angela took Rebecca's hand and closed her eyes. I grabbed both of their hands and hoped that I could see it too. To my surprise, I was able to. I didn't understand how Aunt Angela could handle this. Bridget's thoughts were so angry and full of hatred. Joey was kept in a cave about 80 miles away, 20 miles past the place in the city where Bridget planned to steal another body. The new body was a nun. Bridget was going to betray her allies. She had a man named Papacello who wanted the nun dead. There was also something she called the Voice. The Voice wanted the nun's body to hand over to him. Bridget would have to betray Papacello. Bridget wanted the Voice to have the nun's body because she learned that the Voice was very ancient and powerful. But once in a human body, the Voice, or whatever it is, would become vulnerable. Bridget could steal the Voice's power, and then Rebecca's power. After that, she could kill everyone who stood in her way. Why settle for petty revenge when you can have everything? When the connection ended, I looked at Rebecca. So, is this the entity you want to make a deal with? I asked. She shook her head. Sarah, she's going to kill us all, she said. Only if we let her, I replied. But how can we stop her? Rebecca, make a sound. The last time we faced her, we barely survived. She easily defeated us. Last time, we played by her rules and on her terms. This time it will be different, I said. She's not waiting for us, and we will have help. I'm going to attack her first. She expects us to sit here and wait for her to carry out her plans. We will attack her when she doesn't expect it. But it all depends on the two of you. Just tell me what to do, and we can do it. My aunt said, Annie, I won't be here, but this is what will happen. I told them my plan and explained everything they had to do to make it work. Then I went outside with Chris to wait for our transport. As Gypsy told me, I saw everything unfolding before me, like a chess game played by two very experienced players. Chris and I had been standing in front of the house for less than 5 minutes when she appeared. The yellow Mustang, which had overtaken us on the road, drove up to the house. My Aunt Angela went outside. Sarah, is she here? She asked. She fell silent when she saw the car. Sarah, what's going on? She asked, but even before she finished speaking, the car door opened and a girl of about 6 stepped out. I'm hungry, she said, and I need to go to the toilet. Oh my God, Angela exclaimed. Sarah, this girl is almost as strong as Rebecca, and there's even more power here. But there's dark power all around. Oh God, it's a machine. Annie, take her inside. Try calling her parents. Chris and I are leaving, I said. The girl looked up at me. She's not a machine, she said. She has a name. Her name is Chrissy. She protects us, but mostly me. Angela took the girl by the hand and led her into the house. Chris and I got into the car, and the doors slammed shut as if the car knew where we needed to go. The car took off at an alarming speed. The speedometer needle only reached 140 miles per hour, but we were going much faster, probably over 220 miles per hour. Chris wasn't actually driving the car, we just held on. Once we got a little used to the speed, it became easier to judge by the bridges passing over the road. We covered a mile in about 15 seconds. It took us just under 15 minutes to reach the location where our new allies would meet Bridget's forces. I got out of the car and kissed Chris goodbye, hoping it wouldn't be the last time. The car, which the girl named Chrissy, sped away. The engine sounded great, but after reaching a certain speed, it suddenly became strangely quiet. At first, it seemed to me that I was in the wrong place, but then I heard howls and sounds of battle. I realized that not only was I in the right place, but perhaps I was also late. I saw many people and creatures that looked half human, half dog. There were many of them, and they were all advancing on 2 men and 3 women. One of the men and 2 of the women were the ones I saw at the airport. I was in an alley. Luckily, there were many restaurants in the area. I hid behind one of the large dumpsters and quickly realized that I would be better off inside it. Inside, I could be protected from all sides, and the smell of garbage would prevent these creatures from smelling me. It was a serious battle, and she was very fast and bloodthirsty. I wasn't sure Chris would have survived it if he had been here, and I certainly wouldn't have survived it. Jason suckers, we turned out to be suckers. We assumed the vampire would tell the truth. After all, He promised repentance and patience, a fair fight. They say he will fight them one-on-one. I was sure that he knew about Mason, and if this was all about the vampire we destroyed 2 years ago, he knew that I would be here too. But instead of the promised battle, 5 or 6 vampires and 20 or more werewolves were waiting for us. What was even stranger, on the roof of the building, from where the best view opened, shimmered the figure of a woman who looked as if she was woven from fog. I think this woman scared me more than all the creatures on Earth. But we also had a few surprises. Silver. Another creature howled, and the battle began. I lost sight of my allies. While fighting with all my might, I helped them whenever I could, but the fight required my full attention. I kept my eye on Patience, as I'm sure she kept her eye on me. We did pretty well. We each had our own strengths, and we used them. Patience found the high ground and sent silver arrows of death in all directions. Repentance was a real tank. She crushed everything in her path. Mason was incredibly fast when fighting vampires alone, and my Patience, as always, fought like a Valkyrie. I was always fascinated watching her. Her speed and grace made the rest of us look awkward. Suddenly, she fell, holding her head. I immediately found myself next to her, cutting through everything that stood between us. There was not a drop of pity left in me. When Patience was in trouble, the woman I loved was rising from the ground, though I swear no one touched her. This was something different. And then he appeared. He was furious, screaming, "It's my right to kill her," he yelled. "Killing everyone is my right. You only had to weaken them." The mysterious woman appeared next to him. "You can take everyone else," she said, "but this one is already intended for someone else. Maybe you'll get a man." "We had a deal. Papa recoiled. Now we have a different deal," said the woman from the fog. The vampire bared his claws and fangs, but before he could do anything, he was thrown back and upward. He collapsed limply to the ground. Everyone watched the battle between the ghostly witch and the powerful vampire. Most werewolves and other vampires were torn about whether to help the devoted Papa Chulo or join the powerful sorceress. Some just left. A man with a sword approached the fallen woman in red leather. He looked really worried as she kept her hands on her ears, as if trying not to hear something. It reminded me of the witch's voice, but it couldn't be her. Bridget was checking to make sure her former ally was dead. I knew what I had to do. I wondered what would happen to my plan. I approached the woman. She rose from the ground in obvious agony. As I got closer, I noticed 2 things. The first was a barely visible, bestial entity hovering above her. I wasn't sure if anyone else had seen it. The second was a man with skin similar to hers. You could see from his face how worried he was. "I think I can help her," I said. He looked at me with a mixture of despair and disbelief. "Okay," he answered briefly. Though he didn't say the words, his message was clear. If I hurt her, he would kill me. I slowly took out the amulet that was supposed to protect Rebecca from Bridget and placed it around the woman's neck. There was a sound like a small explosion, and green smoke appeared around the woman. Then a very loud scream was heard. It was so loud that everyone in the area turned to look at us. It wasn't a woman's voice. The woman stood up abruptly, as if she had never been hurt. The amulet on her neck glowed with some kind of power. "Prudence, are you okay?" asked the man next to me. She smiled and extended her hand to him. "I'm fine because of this," she said, pointing to the amulet. "Jason, this thing was in my head. She wanted me destroyed." The voice screamed. "Well, that saves me the trouble of killing you later myself," Bridget said. "Wait, you have to help me," a voice shouted. "If you bring the witch's body here quickly enough, I can still possess it," the voice continued. "Why should I do this?" Bridget asked. "Because we are allies," the voice screeched. "Every union ends sooner or later," Bridget said calmly. "Our union is complete, but don't worry. I will avenge you." She looked back and smiled as she heard his screams, as his essence was absorbed into the amulet. Then she turned to me. "Well then, little witch," she smiled. Her ghostly form was so distinct that it seemed almost tangible. "I'm not sure whether to thank you for ridding me of this braggart or kill you, because I'm sure that you and I will not be friends. It's funny, of all the witches I haven't conquered yet, you're the least powerful, but somehow I feel like you're the one who's going to give me the most trouble." She looked back again, and saw that the vampire was beginning to come to his senses. Perhaps you came here to see how powerful I am, to understand what you need to do. Don't worry, I'll tell you what to do. You must surrender and agree to serve me. Then she fell silent when she noticed I was laughing. You've spent a lot of energy on this battle today, I said. You are weak. It costs you a lot of effort to influence events in this world, doesn't it? That's why you need a human body. I'm not so weak that I won't kill one almost powerless who can barely be called that, she said contemptuously. You would be foolish if you decided to fight me. I'm not the one you should be afraid of, Rebecca said as she stepped out of my SUV. Evie brought them here after me. Rebecca looked at me as if seeking confirmation. I shrugged. You're not strong enough to resist me either, Bridget said scornfully. And if you don't retreat, your husband will be burned alive. The only thing that keeps him in this world is my goodwill. Dare to go against me, and he will die in agony. Your attachment to this man makes you weak. Rebecca made a sound. She looked at me again for support, but I couldn't promise her anything. All I could do was hope Chris would do his part. As Rebecca walked closer to Bridget's ephemeral form, the only thought in my head was that she would lose her mind. She wasn't here. She was divided between worrying about her husband and the fact that she didn't really know how to use her power. The fallen vampire quickly came to his senses. His body began to rapidly heal, and he stood up, rushing at Prudence without thinking. The Cajun did the same. At the same moment, the vampires collided with each other, with a deafening sound like in a stadium during a professional football match. Then many events happened simultaneously. Out of nowhere, the same yellow Mustang arrived at the scene at incredible speed. The door opened, and Chris came out, looking around for me. Joey followed him, rubbing his wrists, but he seemed okay. Then a small woman wearing torn leather clothes stepped out of the car. She looked around and shouted, "Mason!" The vampire looked away for just a split second, but that was enough. Papa Chulo noticed that his opponent was distracted. A Cajun vampire died, looking at the woman he apparently loved. The small woman in a leather jacket rushed across the field to the vampire's body. Everyone was stunned when the woman, sobbing, bent over the vampire's body, which was gradually turning into dust. Papa Culo laughed. One ready, two lungs left, he chuckled. I'll leave you alive for a short time, so that I can kill you slowly over many years. Sometimes I just need something to do. The woman on the ground looked at the vampire and went crazy. She stood up and jumped at him with incredible speed for a human. A huge woman in a green leather jacket, holding what looked like a spear with a metal tip full of jagged edges, shouted, "Pete, no!" The woman moved quickly, but the vampire was faster. She fell onto the dusty remains of her former lover. Everyone around them froze, realizing what had just happened. Then came Bridget's shrill laughter. "Chulo, I changed my mind," she giggled. "This old body has died. He doesn't need it anymore, and soon I'll have this little witch. I'll kill her boyfriend, and you can take all the nuns. I don't need your mercy." Chulo said contemptuously, "We're not allies anymore. Remember? Now I do what I want. You should stay by my side," Bridget hissed. She raised her hand, and small lights flashed around Chulo. The vampire's eyes widened. "Who cares?" he grumbled. He pointed at Joey, and several werewolves rushed toward him. "Patience, repentance, protect this little man," Prudence shouted. "Jason will take care of the vampire." She turned to me. "You're a witch. Can you deal with this ghost?" "We'll try," I replied. I walked across the field to Rebecca, who just watched as the two women tried to protect Joey. I turned around to look at the battle. More and more vampires and werewolves emerged from the forest. Our forces were pitiful compared to their numbers. There was a screech of tires as the yellow Mustang passed Papa Chulo. The vampire jumped into the air, and the car rushed underneath him. "Do you think I'm an idiot?" he laughed. "This is the same way you killed my boyfriend. You did it to save that," he pointed at Prudence. "You took my firstborn from me, and for the sake of revenge, I will kill this creature right before your eyes. Then I will leave you alive, so you will remember her death all your life." He laughed again. Behind him, the car started up again. The tires squealed, and rubber flew out from under them, hitting Papa Chulo. But he just grinned. Suddenly, flames burst out from the exhaust pipes of the car, engulfing the vampire. He shouted for Bridget to help, but she was busy. 400 years later, a vampire named Papa Chulo died. When I turned to Rebecca, I noticed that Jason and Prudence wasted no time rushing to the aid of the two women who were trying to save Joey. As I got closer, I heard Bridget's voice. "Surrender, Rebecca, and your husband will live. You saw that stupid nun sacrifice herself to avenge some vampire. Don't you love your husband just as much? If you give in, you won't truly die. You'll just become a part of me, and this part will make sure I never hurt Joey." "You're tired, Rebecca," she continued. "It's a battle you can't win. You're not even a real witch. You were born with a power that should have gone to someone else. Can't you just take my power and leave me alone?" Rebecca asked. "I'll still need a body," Bridget replied, "and it must be one that can accommodate all this power." Bridget's ghostly figure began making gestures in the air, and suddenly my Aunt Angela emerged from the shadows with my cousins behind her. She began repeating the same gestures to block what Bridget was doing. "Very good," Bridget giggled. "It's a pity that you were too weak. This could have been a good fight, but I have the strength of almost 100 witches. Almost hundreds of weak witches." I said, "Annie, use Rebecca like you used to." The situation has changed dramatically. My aunt grabbed Rebecca's hand, using it as a source of energy. It was obvious that Bridget had more power, but then that little girl who was sitting in the car grabbed my aunt's other hand. Bridget's face immediately became wrinkled as she looked over her shoulder. My aunt had more power now, although not by much, and it seemed that Bridget was already looking for a way to escape. "Auntie, you must destroy her," I screamed. "If you don't, she'll just burn more witches and come back, even stronger." At that moment, my cousins, Evie and Savannah, also joined the battle, strengthening my aunt. Evie grabbed Rebecca's other hand, and Savannah took the girl's hand, forming a chain of 5 witches. All the power concentrated through my aunt. Her eyes glowed bright green, and her red hair seemed to be on fire. "Sarah, what should I do with her?" Angela screamed. "I can hold her, but not for long." "Prudence," I shouted. She saw me and ran towards me, her husband covering her back. I took the amulet from her neck and nodded in gratitude. The amulet still glowed with the power of the demonic essence contained within it. "Aunt!" I screamed over Bridget's screams. I didn't know how Angela technically did it, but the amulet could only contain one essence at a time. Somehow, Aunt Angela bound Bridget's spirit to the amulet and sent it back to the dimension where the demon lived. For a moment, everyone felt relieved. The spirits of Bridget and her demonic ally had been banished from our world. But then we realized how many vampires and werewolves were still around. Jason pointed to the black Mustang that had appeared at the top of the hill. A tall man in black leather with long black hair stepped out, looked around the battlefield, and pulled out what looked like an antique tomahawk. He began circling the tomahawk in the air and met Jason's gaze, who nodded at him. "Patience, repentance, get in the car," Jason shouted. The yellow Mustang started up again. Its door opened, and the car headed toward us. It slowed down as it passed 2 nuns who quickly jumped inside. In response to the rotation of the tomahawk, an icy wind rushed toward the battlefield. "The winds of November came earlier this year," Jason muttered. It was strange that a storm from the Great Lakes would travel so far inland, but these were unusual times. The winds turned into a storm that swept away all the vampires and werewolves standing on the hillside. Many of them died, their bodies crashing into tree trunks at the edge of the forest with all their force. Others were struck by stray lightning strikes that set them on fire. Some tried to escape, but most died. Once the area was clear, the man lowered his tomahawk and nodded to Jason, who waved him back. The man then got into the Mustang and drove off. The entire time he was on the battlefield, which took no more than 5 minutes, he didn't utter a single word. Just when we thought it was all over, when everyone was so exhausted both physically and emotionally that they couldn't move an arm or a leg, another car appeared at the top of the hill. It was an old muscle car, a Chevelle SS. A man got out of the car with a very worried expression on his face. He looked like he could be attractive if his face weren't crisscrossed with worry lines. When he saw us, he sighed with relief and headed toward us. He looked back at the car and shouted something. A pretty woman looked out of the car and ran down the hill toward him. Well, who will explain all this to ordinary people? I asked. I looked around and no one, not even my husband, volunteered. Honey, I think you're the only one who knows what happened here, Chris said. We watched as the man and woman approached us, smiling carefully as they walked around the werewolf corpses. They walked past and headed straight toward where my Aunt Angela stood with my cousins, Rebecca, and the little girl. They were all exhausted from what had just happened. As the man approached them, the yellow Mustang started up and slowly drove toward them. The girl looked at the man and smiled faintly, although she could barely keep her eyes open. "Hi, Dad," she said, climbing into his arms. "We saved the world." "The whole world?" he asked. Her answer was the sound of her snoring. The man turned to his wife and shrugged. "She saved the world," he said. He then turned to the car. "You know, garage door repairs aren't cheap." The machine roared, as if growling with displeasure in response to his reproach. The car door opened, and the man carefully laid the girl in the back seat. He was about to get into the car when his wife stopped him. "Oh no, cowboy," she said. "I'll go for Chrissy. I'm tired. We drove all night. You'll take my Chevelle? You brought it here, so come back with it." He nodded, and she kissed him before getting into the car. "Hey, wait a minute," I called. I walked up to them, followed by my Aunt Angela. "My name is Sarah. We're going to get together and discuss what happened. Don't you want to know what happened to your daughter?" "Hello," the man said. "I'm Tim Matthews. I'm sure my daughter Krista will tell me everything when she wakes up." He smiled at me. "Tim, doesn't all this scare you?" I asked. "There are dead werewolves and vampires everywhere. Your daughter was at the center of it all. She's going to become a very powerful witch. Why don't you and your wife go crazy with horror? I would definitely do the same if I were you." "Sarah, you're talking to a man who drives a Mustang that's haunted by the spirit of his long-dead first love," he replied. "My car, Chrissy, does anything it needs to do to protect us. My daughter Krista was, let's say, conceived in this machine. He and Chrissy have been in touch ever since. Since she was born, Krista often went to the garage and fell asleep in the car. What was strange was that Chrissy suddenly took off in the middle of the night, but we decided it was because Chrissy was protecting her." He walked up the hill to the Chevelle, and his wife drove off in the yellow Mustang. Evie and Savannah opened the trunk of my SUV. Evie took the blanket and stretched out in the trunk, closing the lid. Savannah sat in the second row of seats, her feet up, but she seemed lost in thought. Chris gave her another blanket. Angela and Rebecca followed me to Prudence, Jason, and two other women in leather who were standing near the body. All four were on the verge of tears. "I'm sorry for your loss," I said. "Sarah, you're a witch," said Prudence. "Can you?" I shook my head. "I'm a private detective," I answered. "I'm new to witchcraft. My abilities are more related to clairvoyance. The real witches here are my Aunt Angela and Rebecca." "I'm so sorry," Angela said, "but there are two things that are against us. The first is that too much time has passed. If we had arrived earlier, perhaps something could have been done, but given the current circumstances, I doubt I could have helped even then. She wasn't killed. She gave her life herself. She wanted to die. She didn't see any point in living anymore." "Another loss," the large woman in green leather said bitterly. She turned away, and Jason walked toward her. "Why are you touching me?" she screamed. "Not enough, Prudence. For you, you've already managed to make her a child. God, how much night do you need?" Jason removed his hands as if touching a snake. A few hours later, as the sun rose, we all gathered to discuss what had happened. After I told everyone about the main events, we split into two groups. Jason and Prudence returned to their house, taking the two women with them. I still couldn't believe they were nuns. All four of them were very quiet, mourning the death of Devotion and Mason. Savannah and Evie slept upstairs, waiting for Chris to take them to the airport. My Aunt Angela and Rebecca were sitting on the porch, talking. I saw Angela shaking her head, and Rebecca demanding something from her. Finally, it seemed that Rebecca had achieved her goal. I began to wonder if Rebecca had used her powers on my aunt. Of all of us, Angela came to her senses the fastest. She immediately called Uncle Mike as soon as we got back and told him how much she missed and loved him. I felt the urge to tell Chris the same thing, so I went looking for him. I found him standing on the back deck of the house, looking out over the water. "This is beyond weird," he said. I just nodded and snuggled up to him. A few minutes later, Rebecca came out onto the veranda with a beaming smile on her face. I couldn't figure out what exactly had changed, but something about her was different. She looked happy. She was looking for Joey, who at that moment was throwing stones into the lake. "What did you do?" I asked her. She just smiled at me. "I got rid of something I never wanted and never asked for," she said with a smile. I looked at her in confusion. "Sarah, thank you for all your help," she continued. "I know it was all about maintaining my strength and all that, but I still have that final scene from Carrie in my mind. I never wanted to be a witch. Look at how much pain and suffering this has caused me and Joey. Thank you for explaining to him that this is not cheating." Even as she said this, her gaze was fixed on Joey, standing by the calm water. "Rebecca, what did you do?" I repeated my question. "Sarah, I would be a terrible witch. I'm just not interested in doing this. I know it sounds strange and simple, but my only goal in life is to be the wife of that idiot who throws stones." She paused, her smile fading slightly. "I convinced your aunt to take away all my power. Now she is its owner, and I'm just an ordinary housewife. I need to talk to my regular husband. Thank you again for everything you've done." I shook my head. It all seemed so empty. People and creatures died. I think they actually died to prevent a demon and a long-dead witch from taking over the world. But we also fought to keep Rebecca's strength in her body. And as soon as it was over, she simply gave that power, for which we fought so hard, into the hands of her aunt. After all, if anyone should have such power, then my aunt was truly the best candidate. But it all seemed like a waste. Joey, I still don't know what I'm doing here on Halloween, watching my soon-to-be ex-wife ignore men who approach her just to stare at her breasts. We've come a long way, and I love her more than I can say. We try to make things work, but it didn't seem to work. I think it's mostly me. Rebecca seemed to consider our relationship even more important than before. We spent even more time together, but it took a long time to kiss again. She tried her best, and I think she understood me. I also tried to make her understand that she really didn't cheat on me. It was as if she had been pilled with something. We even went to counseling to discuss this. Rebecca even agreed to take a lie detector test. The test showed that she really didn't remember cheating on me and that she would never do it knowingly. She really loved me, and that made everything worse because I loved her too. I guess I was just confused about my feelings because for the first few weeks after all of this, I literally felt sick at the thought of intimate with Rebecca. She did everything she could. She walked around the house practically without anything, showing off her magnificent breasts, and I could hardly restrain myself from running to the toilet. One night, after I had fallen asleep, she decided to take a different route. "Rebecca, you know I love you, right?" I asked. "And I love you, darling," she replied. "I love you more than anything in this world. If that's true, then why can't I do what all those other guys did? You liked it. You really loved it. Why don't you want to do this for me?" She looked at me as if I had hit her, then burst into tears and rolled to the side. Suddenly, her green eyes sparkled with anger. "Oh, I'm about to get hit by lightning," I said. "Are you going to burn me?" "Joey, I can't even light a match unless I do it with my hands. I gave up all of this because all I wanted was to be your wife. I don't like night. You're the only one who's ever put it in my mouth, and no one has ever tried to do this to me in another way. This is not about me. I'm not that kind of girl, so deal with it." I couldn't come to terms with it. I kept imagining what other men were doing to her. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her leaving to have a night with them and giving them what she was depriving me of. I didn't think I would ever do this, but I left her. She cried and called me a fool. Of course, I was unhappy. I loved her more than life, but I was sure I had done the right thing. I followed her for several days, hoping to catch her with someone. The only thing I caught was a cold. One day, I looked out the window and saw her sitting still, crying, leafing through an album with old photographs of us. I decided the only way to get through this was to move on. Several friends invited me to hang out, but even when I was drunk, I couldn't approach the other woman. Then I heard that a mutual friend had convinced Rebecca to come to the party. He said she would be looking for a new man to replace me. I had to see it with my own eyes. Maybe if she could move on, so could I. I watched her for about half an hour. It was depressing. Even though we were no longer together, in some ways I felt like we were still connected. I turned to leave the party and came face to face with her. Joey, I need you to come home, she said. Do I know you? I asked. I thought you knew, she replied sadly. I thought you knew that I loved you more than anything in this world. I thought you knew that I would do anything for you. And I thought you knew that I would rather die than be without you. You win, Joey. I'll do whatever you want. You can do this with me as you wish. Just please come home. Her eyes filled with huge tears, which began to flow down her face, smearing her makeup. Joey, if you want me to be a prostitute, I'll be one, she said, but I can't take it anymore. You can do whatever you want with me. Joey, I was wrong. I love you so much that I'm ready to give you anything you want, at any time. No, Rebecca, I interrupted her. I was the one who was wrong. I was selfish. I guess I just couldn't come to terms with what I was seeing. You kept telling me it wasn't you, but I didn't believe you. But I love you, Rebecca. I will get back to you in any way I can. Forcing you to do something you don't like is not love. It's just my ego. I can handle this. And then we found ourselves in each other's arms. We left the party and went home. And from then on, we lived happily ever after. Subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you. Go ahead and listen to the next story, because this one is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think about it. Click to the next one. Click to the next one.